Hello, everyone out there on the stationary plane. Just starting up, so give me 1 second so I can share this long-ass link.
So is this on the Morgile channel, like the proper
Yes,
Morgile?
yes, it is, finally.
Is this the first one on the proper Morgile channel then?
Yep. Oh,
Wow! Oh, that's good news.
yes, it is. Thank you. It sure is. And so what I just did was, is I thought I shared the link to that on Facebook, but I didn't. So let me, here we go. Sorry, all out there that happen to be listening live. We're running into some Season 1 technical difficulties, but no worries. So we've got the great Nathan Oakley. How you been doing, my man?
I don't know about great, but yeah, I'm doing fine.
All right, and we've got Kristen Wolf. How you been doing, Kristen?
Oh, doing great, John. How are you?
All right, doing great. So I'm still trying to get this stupid link to join, so I'm sure that everybody's still sort of piling in, and I want to thank everyone for joining us for Season 2, Episode 1 of Static Plain Truth Live, where we just sort of go over our research and where it's taking us in, from either a heliocentric perspective and how that matches or doesn't match our reality, and of course a geostationary flat Earth perspective, which seems to be what we've got. I don't know about you guys, but I've come to the conclusion now it's been over a year, and I've really been looking hard for evidence to support what we've always believed and what we've always been taught as true, and I'm just coming up empty-handed in terms of proofs for the spherical Earth, but everything, and whether we've got every last inkling of the model down to a T or not, I don't think it's necessarily up to us as flat earthers to continue falsifying all of the heliocentric premises. And so, like, just to keep it simple, if we don't have axial rotation and we don't have curvature, then it's irrelevant to continue arguing like the southern stars uh, phenomenon, if that is even a phenomenon. Does that make sense to y'all?
I agree.
Yeah.
So, it's sort of hard to figure out new ways to argue this topic, and to me it's sort of irrelevant because again the burden of proof really does lie on the heliocentric model to come out with some solid evidence of curvature and axial rotation. And I watched a recent, and thanks to Event Skeptic, I watched a recent Hawking test. He did a laser curvature test over 5 miles, and allegedly the laser beam raised, I think, 6 feet above where it should have been if it was a level. But technically, it doesn't make any sense because at 5 miles away, that laser should be going through about 15 feet of water. It shouldn't be 15 feet above a boat that's 5 miles away. So I don't know, or 6 feet, or whatever the case was. But did you guys see that yet? It was like one of those Stephen Hawking documentaries, and they do like the Jeranism laser test over 5 miles.
No,
I
I haven't
haven't
seen
seen
it.
It's pretty funny because they use actors and everything to
How
set the
funny.
stage as if they've done this laser test, but in fact it was repeated by a guy named Dr. Zach. So definitely check that out. Dr. Zach did a laser test over 5 miles, and it was totally leveled. So lasers behave oddly depending on atmospheric refraction. That's always a issue, right? But I don't know. I don't think that's it. I don't think that would make the laser beam raise out of the water, right? Maybe I should roll the clip. I guess I'll probably get a copyright strike. I don't want to do that.
On your very first show back.
Yeah, that would not be a good. So yeah, just check out whenever y'all get a chance out there. Check out it's the Stephen Hawking laser test. It was basically put out there to debunk flat Earth, but then Dr. Zach did sort of a response to it and debunked them. So, and they weren't using actors, they were using actual measurements and people. They weren't like recreating the situation. So, anyways, thoughts on that?
Well, Rob Skiba was on Patricia Steer's show a couple of days ago, and he was talking about something very similar where a surveyor had contacted him, not a flat earther, but had basically explained a very similar situation. He'd done very, very accurate measurements, and he'd measured something like, I can't remember the exact number, but I'm going to guess at about 8 centimeters of swell across, I think it was, 8 miles or something, a vast amount of water. But it was very calm, and all they were measuring was the water being pushed by the wind, and that was all they could measure. In other words, it came back completely flat, which is, we should say that with lots of revelation in our voice. Like, look, it is flat. It's no joke, but it's no revelation to us because it's so obvious. It's obviously and observably flat. No shock.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And just a question out there, is anyone other than me having issues finding the actual live show, or did you just send me a link to that, Nathan? Sorry, y'all.
No, it was when I just had a look to see if it appeared in the like my subscription feed, and it was there at the top of the list, and I've stuck it in Flatland, which is like a Skype group with 100 odd people in, and I've stuck it on Facebook, I've stuck it on
Oh, you stuck it in Flatland. Okay, so if it's in there, then I just got to find the bottom. But yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous because the more and more we look at this, it's just the more preposterous the whole idea of a spinning sphere becomes, and it's like it's just such a waste of time to keep on going over curvature and axial rotation, curvature and axial rotation. But at the same time, if they're putting out, looks like pretty, I wouldn't say multi-million dollars, but I would suppose that Stephen Hawking doesn't bill, cheaply, right? So yeah, maybe a multi-million-dollar production to show curvature of a lake over 5 miles. Like, what would have possibly given them the the reason to do that, right?
Right.
To deceive us, no other reason.
Well, I mean, why would Stephen Hawking want to go measure for curvature and come up with false data, just totally perjured data, unless they were in some kind of an area where, at the right conditions, they know there's going to be this much of inverse refraction or whatever. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, that's amazing. When did you say that was made, or did you say when?
I guess it was pretty recently, but yeah, just I can send you a link, but it's like Stephen Hawking 5-mile curvature test, or 5-mile laser curvature test, something like that.
Okay, yeah, I missed out on it, but I definitely want to see it. But it sounds, if it was recent, it must be in response to all the, talk about the flat Earth circulating around the plane. So,
Well, to me, it would just be so obvious, not just because when you say spinning east at 1,000 miles an hour near the equator, roughly, it's not just that linear frame of reference. It's a curved frame of reference, and so you'd be zipping around a parabolic curve, going east at that rate at the equator. Theoretically, in the heliocentric model, got to put your caveats in there.
yes.
But it would be plainly obvious just by simple demonstrations. No theories involved. We don't need gravity if the Earth is a stationary plane. And so all this is, it makes so much sense to me, and it makes so much sense to anyone who actually goes down that path to look at all this stuff. But from the stance of an average person, I mean, I was there 14 months ago. I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. Why would anyone, ever go out and make videos about this topic? I was just astonished. But once you actually do start doing observations and going back and thinking, through your life, has the heliocentric model matched my experiences, or has it been in conflict with my experiences? I've mentioned this a few times, but I remember distinctly when I was pretty young, 10 or 11, I took my first airplane flight, and I told my aunt after arriving in Dallas, Fort Worth from Orlando that I figured out the Earth wasn't spinning. Something to that effect. I can't remember exactly what I said, but she was like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Well, the flight from Orlando to Dallas, Fort Worth is the same in duration to the return flight, And so even as a child, 10, 11 years old, as a kid, I realized I had this observation that I was pretty, I was pretty confounded. But then, of course, my aunt, same difference, potatoes, potatoes. She said, no, that's stupid. Everyone knows the Earth is spinning. And so, well, I guess I'm stupid. But in fact, if you go back and revisit this topic, indeed, there should be, and really this is dependent on the time of the year too, I reckon, because the Earth is supposedly going around the sun, but that's all, we don't even need to look at that until we look at this supposed spinning that would cause airline flights going north to south all sorts of problems. It should make helicopter rides, a lot more fun than just hovering. If a helicopter was just hovering, technically, if you think about the laws of physics, the centrifugal force, if the Earth was spinning and then the helicopter takes off, it wouldn't just maintain that frame of reference forever. It would need to be fastened to the ground to remain that rotating frame of reference around that parabolic curve, going east 1,000 miles an hour, dropping about 300 feet per hour, I want to say, and of course orbiting around the sun, flying through space around the galaxy flying through space, and it's just like all of these different, sometimes in sync, sometimes in contradiction, motions would just be so plainly obvious. And unfortunately, it's just very, it can be difficult to get people to look at this topic for some reason. Maybe y'all have had better experience, but hey, this is such a new thing. Like honestly, I have such a different outlook on life in the last 14 years. It's just how much it can change a person to just stop, think about what we've been taught. Does it match our observations? And then research it, do the experiments. And I don't know, it's just, do you guys feel that way too? Like, I don't know, maybe it's just me.
I mean, the problem is that what we're seeing, I hate to use these sort of loaded words, but awakening is unprecedented. And when we see people have like meltdowns and crazy benders off the back of this, and we just sort of isolate them as one individual case, but on the whole, we don't know what is as a net result of finding out these great big revelations. You find out you're not on a spinning ball, we're not hurtling through space, it's all a load of nonsense. Space has absolutely been misrepresented, and you don't know what that does to people cognitively. It could be extremely damaging to some people. So while you say it'd be nice to wake everybody up, you then have to question, well, are we part of a machine that is waking people up gradually rather than in a great big wave so that we have people descending into chaos? You just don't know. It might be that when people describe Flat Earth as being a psyop, I'm not trying to perpetuate that as an idea, other than to say that it may be inevitable. The Earth is observably flat, and that is an inevitability that we'll find out because it's so obvious. We chuckle, but everybody's been programmed. So to unbrainwash them quickly might be a dangerous thing. Not to be a party pooper.
No, and this is, yeah, no, I totally agree. This is not something that you can just approach everyone with and they'll be open to it. And like I said, I was right there 14 months ago or so. Well, actually, it was maybe a little longer than that when I was first, this topic was first ever mentioned to me in any sort of real sense, because, I always had the preconceived notion that it was just a stupid thing for stupid people from 500 years ago plus. That was my take on it, and I was fine with that. But once you actually go in and look at this, it couldn't possibly be what we've all been told. And so, but you're right though. People they don't want to do the research, they don't want to do the observation, they don't want to participate in the science, and yet they say that we as flat earthers are anti-science, and that's really, I mean, that's preposterous as well. Science is defined by what? Experimentation and ultimately getting towards the truth or closer towards the truth. Maybe never any absolute truth, but we can certainly falsify curvature over many miles We can falsify spinning with just about every physical experiment. I was thinking about this the other day. We've all seen the big the vacuum chamber that NASA has,
Mm-hmm.
and they drop like a feather and a brick, right? And in the vacuum, the feather and the brick fall at the same rate. Well, that's all fine, but what isn't it? I always thought this is what globers will tell you, that it's the atmosphere. It's the atmosphere, and it's that momentum that everything has that keeps it going east. And I say, well, fine to east, but what about dropping 330 feet per hour, down at your feet? Um, and so anyway, to me, if it is, that's the Glober's claim. It's the atmosphere that keeps plane in lock sync with the gravitic, orbital spinning of the globe. But what about in a vacuum chamber? There's no gravity in a vacuum chamber, is there, Nathan? I mean, not gravity, atmosphere. There's no atmosphere in a vacuum chamber, right?
Yeah, it depends where it is. If it's on Earth, then yeah, plenty.
Well, not enough to keep, say, a feather locked to the rotational velocity of the spinning Earth, right?
No.
I don't think so. It would be in a vacuum chamber. You'd think that feather and that brick should slide a little bit west. I mean, that's what you'd think in a vacuum chamber, because again, the whole thing against the proof that I had arrived at when I was 10 or 11, that like an eastbound flight from New York to LA or back, it's the same duration either way.
Even with the Coriolis contradiction, they would say that it's dragging along the atmosphere or the lack thereof. So therefore, the vacuum, there's still. I'm sure you could talk your way around that in the heliocentric explanation for Coriolis. I'm sure there'd be some sort of weaselly words in there somewhere.
Of course.
Probably.
Hey Robert, how you doing? Have you met Robert Shortman before?
Hey, hi, Morgalen. Hi.
Yeah. Hey, what's up,
And
Robert? We've met
Kirsten.
before, man.
Yes, we have. Yeah, we spoke before. And Kirsten, pleased to meet you. I've not spoke to you before, I don't think.
True, Robert. Nice to meet you, and nice to meet you too, Nathan. I keep meaning to say that since I didn't say it right off, straight off, and didn't
Sorry,
imagine.
you're both really rude.
Well, I probably should have introduced you, but I'm the worst host ever. So, and I seriously, like, I cannot find the live feed. I haven't done this in so long, so I was gonna like share up links, but I've like literally spent the last 20 minutes trying to figure out like where is this damn link and how am I gonna share it on Facebook. So sorry. Hopefully,
I've done it. I've shared it. I've shared the link.
yeah,
To
I'm a mess. I'm sorry.
I'm on it. I'm on it. I've got you. I've got your back.
No, it's fine, really, and I appreciate it. But yeah, I'm just gonna have to forget about this sharing this link because I'm like, I can't even find the. There we go, the live hangout. So, Robert, what you been up to? Ooh, and we got Event Skeptic. So this is, like I said, when everyone probably joined on. This is a show that everyone's late to because I say, it doesn't matter if you're late.
They turn up eventually.
Well, it takes people, yeah, it takes people a while to start showing up on the audience side as well. So, the first 20 minutes is usually just sort of pre-chat, and now that we've got everyone's attention and we've got plenty of people to talk, so that I don't have to keep talking, I'm gonna go grab something to drink. And if anybody wants to plug anything or just mention anything real quick, I'm gonna go grab a drink, and I'll be right back.
Yeah, I'll go for it. Yeah, I'm doing a live hangout tomorrow at 8 p.m. GMT plus. It should be quite good. There's going to be a couple of guests that are known to be coming, but there's going to be a few extra people that will be turning up as well to make the call even more interesting. So it's going to be good. Lots of interesting stuff to talk about. Structured water and other interesting stuff like that this chap's really quite aware of, and he also makes the most fantastic crystal LED lights that light up your room. So he'll hopefully be showing some video footage of that as well, which I think he's busy filming as we speak.
And it won't be although it's the first on your channel, it's technically not your first hangout, is it?
No, yeah, because I did the one at the weekend, so that was yeah. It's the second hangout live then. Yeah.
I'm back. Sorry. And it's 7 Up time for me. Uh,
Yeah, so my
so
channel's Doomweaver 2007 and it's on at 8 o'clock tomorrow GMT. But it's gonna be good. Gonna be fun.
Doom Weaver, isn't it? Doom
Yeah.
Weaver. Because I got
Yeah.
it wrong. Doom Weaver.
Yeah, it's an old kind of name that I didn't realise I could change it, and then I kind of started with it, and then got subscribers, and then it was kind of
yeah,
too too,
that's exactly what my name came from, honestly.
too late then.
Yeah, you've
Yeah.
both got gaming names, haven't you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly where I got my name. It was just a name I sort of made up, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was a tag name that I used for going all the way back to God, Team Fortress Classic.
Wow.
It was
Okay. Yeah, that's cool.
a mod of the original Half-Life series. So there you have it, showing my age a little bit with video games. Now that's
Now
creepy.
I know where you're coming from. So yeah.
Showing your age with video games. What is the world coming to?
It's funny when people pronounce it TheMorgile and things like that. Other pronunciations too, right? Oh well. It's
Yeah.
cool though.
Oh, I mean, I thought it was always clearly Morgile. Morgile.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah.
clearly what it says. But no, I've had people say Morgile, and I'm like, wow, that sounds that sounds kind of like a, I don't know, Colombian drink or something. I'm gonna start saying Morgile.
And then there's the Morgul. I don't know
Yeah.
how many different ways can you say it.
Well, I think people do that intentionally because Morgile is just very easily to spell. It's spelled like it sounds, but Morgul and Morgul, that's it's subterfuge all day.
And how's Ronnie doing? How are you, Ronnie? Can you hear us?
Um,
Hey
Event
everyone.
skeptic.
Hey
What's up,
everyone.
bud?
Nice to be here. Hey, happy you're back, Morgo.
Yeah, man. Just had to move to Georgia. My wife's in the hospital, and it's just been one hell of a couple weeks. But you know what? I would be nowhere else than on this show because, again, this is like one of the things that y'all missed if you're just joining us is I had a confession that this is, in the last 14 months, this whole cosmology change has changed the way that I look at everything to a point where I can never go back to what I was doing before because it's just so important to get this truth out to people. And even if it's just one person a day or one person a year, I don't care. Like, I really don't care what else happens as long as I can keep getting people. And I don't know why. I mean, I think it's just because, I know it to be true and I just can't stand people to be deceived. I mean, do y'all sort of feel the same way that it's like almost a
Absolutely.
moral
Compelling.
imperative?
Absolutely. It's so
I do.
compelling that you feel, well, compelled.
Even with my friends, I've started to mention it, and yeah, some of them are really starting to question everything now. So yeah, it's the way to be rather than just trust the rubbish that they've been feeding us for years.
And hey, could it be the alignment that happened in 2012 and the Great Awakening?
Could be. Could be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Mayans, you got to hand it to them. They weren't that far off. And something that I said leading up to 2012 is that, you could look at it as this whole, if you look at their long count calendars or whatever, it recycles back to the beginning after so many, it's like a couple thousand years. Yeah, the
Bakhtun?
Bakhtuns, right. And so when you find out that, well, wait a minute, they weren't talking about the world actually ends. They were just talking about an awakening.
Yeah.
That was the way that they saw it, was different sorts of sort of life-altering or paradigm-altering events or awakenings that would occur, and they weren't that far off the money. I mean, you got to hand it to them. 2012, really 2013, 2014, that's when this topic started getting some mainstream, well, at least lunatic fringe mainstream
Yeah, well, and even
coverage.
the calendar, the gear-like workings, it's like the prayer wheel that you spin it's basically the pyramid rolled from east to west and spun, and they were able to conclude and produce predictions for all the alignments, astronomical occurrences, and observations on the ground with these calendars. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, and it's so funny too because uh, astronomers have been predicting eclipses and the paths or the the so-called orbits of the other wandering stars or planets. They've been predicting and tracking that stuff and observing, making those observations since long before they ever thought it was a spinning sphere. And yet there's a lot of people who think that for some reason the fact that we can, predict eclipses or predict certain stellar or solar alignments, whatever you want to call it, it just means that we have a very almost clockwork perfect, like you said, interconnections going on here. And I just don't think that sort of lock sync, almost like timing belt perfect, eclipses was a big thing for me when you realize like the eclipses are all on perfectly rotating 18-year cycles. That doesn't make really much sense in the heliocentric thought pattern. And so yeah, it's just one thing after another, and never will the twain shall meet again. I don't think. That's just me personally.
Silence.
Yeah, dead silence.
Always-
So anyway, have you guys heard? What do y'all know about the whole Freemasonic stuff, circling the square? That's something that the Freemason guys like to do a lot, circling the square. And I'm just wondering if that has anything to do with the Masons hiding flat Earth.
Could be.
I could say the different. I think they've been trying to share this truth for the last 100 years.
Do you?
Circle in the square, I think, refers to the instruments that they have as their kind of reference tools, like the compass, the square, the protractor, and all the other things that they have involved with that. So the square is one of them. Not too sure about circle, but circle in the square would be a reference to something within that, I think.
Yeah, and it's like a basic geometry thing that they do. I don't know much about it, but the Masons, it's always been fascinating to me since I started looking into them, because I don't know. I don't think that they're really sharing it. They may be sharing it at certain levels of Masonry, but I don't think they really share truth. I think they breed, and no offense to any Masons out there. I know some people that are Masons that are decent people. They just haven't made it to certain levels of it where I think that there is some bad stuff or some not so precious stuff going on. But that's just me. But no, I don't know. The Masons trying to share this for 100 years. I don't know. I guess it's been the Jesuits really pushing the globe, huh?
Well, it's not hidden, but the whole death oath thing is where I draw a line. I would never swear allegiance to any man or papacy, right? And if that's what's involved, I think they've all been led astray. But you can easily search the temple layout of the floor and the way that it inscribes, let's say Mercury's transits, the inferior and superior transits with the sun on the Mason's floor actually maps out the pentagram.
I know that they do use cryptic words, so what they'll do with a standard word, they'll pull out 2 or 3 words within that and make a separate word, so each sentence could spell out a completely different word.
Well, yeah, and so okay, so circling the square, and I could probably put up a diagram, but it's just so easy. I don't know. I don't really know what they're doing with this, but you just take a circle and then put a square over top of it. The square is a little bit bigger than the circle. You've got like 4 diamond or 4 triangles coming out of each, sides of the circle, and so you've got this sort of geometric pattern where I don't know. They have some sort of I don't know, they hold some affinity to this, or they reference it in esoteric or sort of occult ways. And to me, it's almost as if they're hiding flat Earth. I don't know. Maybe what you mentioned, Nathan, that you think that they've been trying to share it. What makes you think that they've been trying to share it? Was that Event Skeptic? Sorry.
Yeah, it was Ronnie.
Yeah, sorry, Ronnie.
Yeah.
Well, it says it in one of the documents that I read that, there's an echo. It basically said that, on the quite to the contrary, it's been said that many people have said the Masons were hiding it, but yet a quick Google search will show you that you can find pretty much anything you want.
Well, how many people are looking at that, though? But their thing is to hide things in plain sight, and it's sort of almost like the way NASA works, and we know they're Masons. They like to hide things in plain sight. It's almost like everything they do is a test to see how many people are paying attention, how many people might be waking up, and maybe people didn't have a chance to really wake up until 2012 or another point in time. We've already touched on 2012, but until recently, perhaps people have not been able to connect the dots, even though the symbols have been there all along for anybody who is interested in taking up the study of it. But of course, the indoctrination that all of us receive is one where we're disconnected from any meaning that symbols might have. We're disconnected from intuition. We're disconnected from even our basic senses, which of course disconnects our critical thinking in large part. And so how many people, until this kind of revolution of truth researchers, would ever have thought about it? Or if they did, who was going to listen if they talked about it to anybody, including their best friends or their family members? That's the same situation we're in now, even though there's a lot more people who are waking up and quite awake to these symbols and the meanings of geometric shapes and things like this.
Sacred
So
geometry,
I have to put
sacred
that out
geometry plays definitely into that, and
Indeed.
sacred geometry, it is quite an old thing that they, if you knew about it hundreds of years ago, 500 years ago, and you had that particular symbol of the flower of life kind of drawn on a pattern, that's it. You'd have had your head chopped off, and the map would have been transported into the, place where they keep all the sacred stuff and hidden away. So they knew about the pattern then. So that's quite interesting. It's been around for a long time. It's not nothing new. It's
Yeah,
just
whether
forgotten, I think.
whether or not the Masons turn out to be a super nefarious, brainwashing cult-like group, the fact that the oral traditions and the ceremony that they've kept, whether the Masons even know it themselves, I beg to differ that they even realize that the ceremonies that they do are actually the sun doing its path across the temple floor. I doubt they even really know Morgile. And some of the documents, it seemed like some of the Masons were disappointed that the initiates weren't even learning this.
Yeah, that's so true. That is true. That's something I picked up and sort of put down. But yeah, you're right. They act like the sun going over a flat Earth during their ceremonies, right? So
Same with the Catholic Church, all the churches, the temples, the Washington building. It seems to be this Ankh, this cross, this square, or even the great square in the sky with Pegasus as the vernal equinox. It leads from the east to the west, and that great square is how we map the sky.
yeah, man, it's so bizarre when you sit to think about how great this deception is, and really it makes you wonder how many people have known this whole time. I mean, how could they possibly keep a secret like that in? I mean, if you get to, like, let's just say hypothetically you get to the top of masonry and they're like, well, if you're either going to be a 33rd degree mason or and figure out that the earth is a static plane in truth, um, or you just go on about your way and you say a 32nd degree Mason. I mean, what if that's like one of the tests that they have to be smart enough or wily enough to figure this out? I mean, it's put right in front of their face in all the rituals, so maybe it's not that big of a leap. But to learn that secret and to know it and
Well,
then have to keep it in, I think that would just be torture.
and the last thing I'll add to this is the fact that I found in my research something about the Pegasus square being an oblate square. So you got Neil deGrasse Tyson up there saying the world is an oblate sphere, but you know how these crazy people have to act. They have to, wink, wink. It's actually the opposite of an oblate sphere would be an oblate square.
Huh. Yeah. I guess it would, wouldn't it?
It's also the shape of the diamond in the baseball game, which is America's favorite sport, as well. Um, the Enoch books always state that there's 9 circular spheres around a central square. So people who've been reading the Enoch have completely missed the fact that, or it's hidden. I don't know, but even the symbol of Earth is a square. With the the whatchamacallit, the elements.
Yeah, and now, are we going to talk? I don't know. I'm getting mad feedback. Sorry, you guys. and I guess maybe subconsciously a reason I brought this up, and we'll jump back to it. But there are some square flat Earth models out there being kicked around, and I think that it's important to look at those as well. But and we'll jump back to that. But I wanted to ask you British guys. That would be Nathan and Rob. Do you guys learn much American history in like your regular high schooling, or
Yeah,
probably
a little
not?
bit. We learned about the Civil War. I don't know about you, Robert.
Yeah, a little bit about it. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, the reason I'm asking this is because it seems to me, and this is just sort of a theory that I've been kicking around, and we'll get back to flat Earth, but it's all relative, or all relevant, I think. Um, but if this is my theory, I think that the Revolutionary War was won by the bad guys, and the Civil War in America, and even possibly the French Revolutionary War. These wars were all won by this sort of criminal hierarchy or criminal element in the hierarchy, and they had the luxury of writing down all the history books that were taught. And if we're questioning science, we might as well question history as well. And to me, it makes a lot of sense when you go back and look at characters like Benjamin Franklin and George Washington. They're all supposedly these great American heroes. But I've just recently learned, and I've actually been researching on it a little bit more heavily, that there were seven United States presidents prior to George Washington under the Articles of Confederation. So I was just wondering, how
Yeah, I
deep.
found that out a few weeks ago. I was like, wow, okay, I didn't know that.
It's crazy though. So why? And so this is what I'm getting at with that though.
The
Why? Go ahead.
global cartel.
Sorry.
It's the global cartel.
Oh, hey Che.
The global cartel.
Yeah, I heard you that time. How you doing, man? Yeah, you're winding out there a little bit, Shay. Okay.
He's barely coming through at all.
Yeah, got it. Thanks. Okay. So, anyway, who was that?
That was Jay.
Chi?
Jay. I'm not
Okay.
sure who.
Yeah, I guess he had some web problems. So, back to what we were just talking about. What were we just talking about?
I think
Square in the circle.
Squaring the circle. Oh, yeah. So, what do y'all think though about the Civil War and the Revolutionary War? So,
Well, it could be the case that the wars themselves, obviously the battles. Well, I say obviously the battles took place. We assume the battles took place, but the wars themselves, maybe there is no sides. Maybe it's all just an orchestrated nonsense. Maybe it's all predetermined what the outcome's going to be and what the net, what will be divvied up afterwards. Maybe these things are all predetermined. Same with current wars.
yeah, totally, man. Yeah.
Okay, there's the sixth person who's come back. Okay.
How you
Hi.
doing, buddy?
Hello.
I think we've got you now.
Yeah, I'm trying to be low profile, but regardless. Can you hear me though?
Yep.
Yep. We can hear you good. So, I don't know. This has just been something that I've sort of been kicking around, because why would they have any reason to teach us lies about history? And that's what they've sort of done, at least here in America. And to learn about the whole Articles of Confederation thing, it puts characters like Benjamin Franklin in a new light. Now, Americans all know Benjamin Franklin because he's on the $100 bill. But what are y'all taught about Benjamin Franklin over there? Because he was a pretty popular figure with the royalty over on that side, wasn't he?
I don't know a great deal about Ben Franklin. I've got to be honest.
Okay. I'm just checking. I'm just checking your history skills. No, really, I'm just curious to know because I like to see what sort of what sort of things people are being taught in different parts of the world. But yeah, I'm certainly no history major, so I just know the dude because he's on the $100 bill. But in fact, he
It's
was.
always,
Huh?
oh, so I was just going to say it's well, to your question, I believe they're um, always wanting to create false narratives with what they talk about with history to serve whatever agenda they're working on, one of which has been the notion of white imperialism. That's a whole thing that I'm not even prepared to delve into, but I just had to note that because clearly the white man has been sort of made to look like the biggest bully on earth, and that's like America has been held up to look like this beacon of freedom and independence and democracy through democracy, that it never truly has been, which I know will offend a lot of people. It's the idea: have we ever really been independent from the crown that we were trying to escape, supposedly, when the colonies were started in America? Not to mention on the backs of the natives through genocide, but still, here we are, and we still look like the jerks, those of us who are white, of which I am a group, in that group, whatever, like it or not, by way of the color of my skin I was born with, and as far as I know, didn't have a choice about it, but there's still this sense of energetically the heritage of my ancestry, the guilt that it places on even me, my generation today, the atrocities that the white man has committed worldwide. And then I was given a narrative last year by a researcher, actually a flat earth researcher. I'm not sure I should mention his name, but very prominent guy, and he was delving into what he said was even a bigger deception than the flat earth, and it's something that a lot of other researchers have covered, which is supposedly the true the true racial lineage of humans, of mankind. And the idea that we all actually started from black people was what this flat earther talked about with me, and how he said whites are a mutant gene, started by way of a mutant gene that was then propagated to be used as this, looking like, we again have to be the guy. We're always the bad guy, the white people. We're always starting the wars, and we're always bombing other people in their countries and stuff like this. And so, and the genocide that started America as we know it, and so on, right? So
that's a good point, because if you control the narrative, that directly addresses John's question, which is, well, why lie about history? And it's kind of the 1984 example, which is that there's events that happen, that people may die in these events, but the whys and wherefores of the events you can control after the fact. You can decide what the reason behind the event, the cause, the effect, you can make all that up afterwards. And further to that, you can change it depending on what the current narrative needs to be. So if you need something to have a certain explanation in an event, you can give it. If you control the narrative, if you control history, which the powers that should not be do.
The Hegelian dialect.
Precisely.
Before, during,
order through chaos.
Yeah.
Yes.
No,
and
that's
trauma-based mind control too. The idea that we become, as individual races, beset with our own set of issues, like the guilt that I referred to earlier, being honest about what our ancestors did in our respective races.
I know. I've always felt sort of bad for being, a white dude, but my great-grandfather moved here from Greece, so like that was like in the 1900s, right? So why am I sitting here feeling guilty for being white when none of my ancestors did any of this slavery crap? We don't even know who did, and that was bull. You shouldn't do people like that. I agree, what we did, I say we, and see, we carry that guilt with us, and I'll just use the term we, but what we did to the Native Americans was horrible, obviously, but
But how do you know what you did?
That's
exactly,
the
I didn't
thing.
hear any of that.
That's the thing. We're in a societal petri dish that's controlled by these Masons and the powers that be, the Bilderbergers and all that stuff, and they do have a direction that they're going, but they're shifting society on such a large scale. They have plans decades and 100 years ahead. They know their direction. I personally have my view on it, and I believe that it's a Luciferian cult that is hell bent on control and control, power, and a promise from somebody that's not going to be followed through.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Uh, you know, sorry, Kristen. I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback. Did you say something, Kristen?
Oh, I just said yes, actually, and that was a good point. That Che, is it Che or Chi? I'm not sure.
It's Che.
Okay,
like
I thought
Guevara.
so. And Che, the promise, the last part of your statement, I'm interested to hear more about. If you'd like to elaborate or expand on that.
The Luciferian part?
The promise that would not be kept, I think, was the last part.
Well, their father is the father of lies. So he's just like Adam and Eve in the garden. He promised them something they already had, and he gave them a lie, and they lost everything. They had everything he promised them already, okay? And he lied to them. He was going to give them something they already had. That's irrelevant. But he promises, and he is the father of lies. He can't uphold that. These 33rd degree Masons, these people that get in, they're powerful, they're influenced, and they're willing to do the work necessary for the machine to move forward. Those are the people in power, the ones who are willing, where their intent is selfishness, greed, power, everything that's inward, and they feed off of that. And those are the people who are in the know, the 32nd and the 33rd degree Masons, Walt Disney, Benjamin Franklin, George Bush, all these people who are willing to do the dirty work because they have no moral standard, but a selfish intent that is driving them to the impulses that get them into those positions. They have to be a willing participant, let's put it that way.
Well, how much of it is bloodlines, where they're born into it and maybe aren't given so much of a choice but to play a certain role?
Let's put it this way. With that in mind, the bloodlines are the only way in for certain things. For powers and principalities, like, say, the 10 kings that are coming into this global union of 10 factions of the globe, okay? Those are bloodlines. Some of the other people are not bloodlines. Some of the other people are simply willing participants that'll go to the extreme to do these ghastly things to us for the sake of their gain. And they're willing to do whatever it may be, decimate populations, start wars so they can facilitate both sides and win on both sides, on the up and the down, just like the market. They play society that way.
Oh yeah, that's totally true, man. I agree with everything that y'all have just said, and it really, this is where my research has been leading me towards, and as scary as it sounds, I think that this revelation that we've all been sort of gifted with here in this very strange time that we're living in, is really, just like I said before, it's so important. But it's like that they've been, like you said, one of y'all said it was some really good points, but they've been sort of progressing history forward with their plans, 100 years ahead, 200 years ahead, and they keep their records of, what's happened in the past for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so we're dealing with, groups of people that have been trained, and really put in positions to keep this sort of system going where they're always 100 or 200 years ahead of the current time. And in that sense, I think that they are using symbology and sacred, geometry and that sort of thing to communicate amongst one another across worldwide bandwidths, but it doesn't get picked up by your average person because your average person isn't initiated to read into those signs. And, maybe we're not supposed to be initiated to read those signs. Maybe we don't want to be affiliated with that, but then you're left with ignorance. And so, that's the last thing we want to do is be ignorant of these people's tactics. And so I think that these are sort of weak spots that they have, that having to show us what their plans are, so that we'll either accept it or maybe there's some pre-programming going on there. And then, of course, you have all this guilt attached to being just simply sitting here breathing air, right?
Oh my gosh, the carbon freaking offsets. That's oh man. Okay, we're going in good places here. Cool. Well, hey, let's. What was I going to say? Oh my.
The human shaming.
Mandela. Does anybody want to go Mandela tonight?
Painful as it is, we have to go there, probably, yeah.
Yeah, well, what, okay. You sound like someone I was listening to earlier today. Do you have a show with another lady?
Are you asking me? Sorry.
Yes.
I don't. I'm not on any other shows currently.
You sound like one, or I forget what it was I was listening to. They were going over some stuff today. It was very interesting. Has anybody...
You've got your YouTube channel, right, Kristen?
I do. It's, the Plain Earth Inquiry. Recently changed from flat to the Plain Earth Inquiry. And, yeah, but it's. I only have a few videos. But anyway, not to interrupt Kay's train of thought there.
No, the flat Earth deception is one cog in... I'm on a... What? Call Mom.
It is an onion of deception, many layers.
Well, let's just put it this: there are many layers. It's one cog in many, and it's to cover up. Okay, let's preface this. I'm Christian, and I believe that this all is part of a cosmic. And take it for what it's worth from me. You guys can hate me for my opinion or not. I'm not here to be hating on anyone. I just want to be able to communicate, and so I don't mean to offend, but I'm going to just say I'm a Christian. I believe the Watchers, the fallen angels, they're using this euphemistic alien thing. There's a greater deception coming with this whole Antichrist thing, the whole beast system, and it's all coming to a head. And all this information is out there for those who have eyes to see, in my opinion. And I think that on that dime, all this pivots, and all these people are being influenced by powers that are much higher than the powers that be that we think of. And they are tied in a way...
I've got to interject there, because I think that's part of another layer of deception. So that cognition, that line of thinking, leads you down a path that you've been pre-programmed with bullshit like Star Wars. So the opposite of the God that you worship, Jesus for you, the powerful, the spiritual, the opposite end of that is the dark, the evil, the people that you attribute power to already, and we're already using these words, power. So you've got these powerful people who worship Satan, and what's Satan? Well, he's got endless power, and your cognition, your predictive programming has men with lightning coming out of their fingers at the end of that cognition path. That, to me, is horseshit. No offense to you, I don't want to offend you as a Christian.
Oh, yeah. No, see, that's the thing. You won't offend me. I want to hear what you have to say, and honestly, because if we can't speak candid and honestly, there's going to be no motion forward. So please be honest, and if you don't agree with me, that's so fine.
Well, I see it as we're told at school about dinosaurs, we're told about the heliocentric model, we are told about God. And then further in life, for people like us, we see the subliminal messages hinting at Luciferian activities. And you scratch the surface, and you find that, lo and behold, the powers that should not be do worship Lucifer. Well, that's just another layer of bullshit that distracts from the fact that George Bush is no different to me. He's flesh and blood. He's just a guy, But if we perceive these people as having power and our images of power are from superheroes and gods, then we're left with this image that if these people worship those powers, that they ultimately are powerful too. And the reality is they are not. They are just like us. And therefore, by lowering them to our standards, we actually raise ourselves. Now, that's not to say that by grouping everybody together as being equal, that we are saying, wow, that means no one's special. Well, on the contrary, it makes us realise that we have as much within us, within our own ability, to be as influential as George Bush or whoever. Now, he's using all of the media, propaganda, all of these tools to achieve that. But as one man, I can do the same if I choose to, because you realise your potential by virtue of knowing the huge deception that flat Earth is. Now, I can choose to attribute that very directly to flat Earth, and I assume lots of other people on this panel would do the same. But through investigating that flat Earth, I've come across other layers of deception, and the biggest one for me, forget this topic in terms of Luciferianism, the next big lie that I perceive in our future is parallel universes and all of the stuff that goes alongside the predictive programming for the heliocentric model in all of our crap and garbage that we've hopefully all switched off from when we've stopped watching movies and TV. But, you know, when you're dissecting up Back to the Future or Red Dwarf for me in Britain, all of those things are laced with
good. Hey, good show, by the way. I like that over here, too.
Red Dwarf is my favourite.
Oh, yeah, that's good stuff. I like My Hero, too.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, all of this stuff is predictively programming us on multiple levels. And when you have stuff that we're told about in Quantum Leap, you know, 20 odd years ago, and then suddenly CERN is unveiling information that's on the same lines.
Which episode?
Of Quantum Leap.
Yeah.
But what if we do have a standard and there is a creator, Nathan, and there is power, the real true power that these Luciferians think they have? Are you saying that that doesn't exist as well as
No, not at all. I mean, on a collective level, we can achieve great things by being connected in a very literal way. And, you know, some people might view the collective consciousness as us being a very small dot of light that is God. You know, I've heard that explanation. Now, it's not necessarily what I believe, but do I believe there is a power beyond ourselves? Yes, absolutely. Do I believe in the biblical description of this? No, if I'm honest, I don't. You know, I would, if people asked me, what's your faith? I'd say I'm a Christian. I was raised a Christian. You know, I go to church. I was married in a church. You know, but does that mean that I will buy into that paradigm? Absolutely not.
Your collective thought, though, on the that's true. The Tower of Babel was stopped because collective thought was so powerful. If you want to talk of it in a biblical sense, I'm using that as an example, but you know what I'm talking about because in the Bible, I won't say it as if it were true for your sake. I'll say it as if it's the hyperbole or mythos. But they came together as one. They were united. They all spoke the same language, and they were dedicated to the direction they were going in. That is how things do happen. The Tower of Babel.
The direction it was stated as they were going up to kill God, right?
Correct. The Gilgamesh or Nimrod, whoever.
Joshua.
Exactly.
But you
right.
The other interesting thing for Christians and other scholarly people that read the scriptures is the actual orientation of the tents that were set up by supposedly God, and then also the breastplates, the coverings that protected the priests as they would go into the Ark of the Covenant, which also is the same cubic measurements as the so-called Earth, and as well the pyramid base is also. And you know, why aren't they teaching certain things in churches like that you can completely understand? You know, I think it's been so overrun. The cornerstone that they threw away could very well be the reality we live in.
Well, check this out. I 100% agree with you. Practical application and real wisdom. See, they want to stay away from the power of God. They're afraid to give up whatever it is. They're afraid to give up. Whatever the people who aren't completely dedicated to that way of life. And I'm not dissing anybody. I'm just saying that's just how I would, I guess, explain it. That don't rely on that. they don't dig deeper. They don't know about the giants. They don't know about like all of the deep things, all the books, the Book of Enoch. Hey, what's his name? Zen Garcia. He just did that book with the flat Earth. He couldn't get with the heliospheric Earth, the moon, and all of the timetables for Sabbath keeping and all that. He just wrote a book on that. And the flat Earth was the compass necessary to set those items straight. And as far as I'm concerned, the Bible corroborates with the Earth being a flat plane, and in a lot of different ways. But, and, you know, that's what I believe.
Well, and to just so that y'all know sort of what my standpoint is, and first of all, I want to say, Nathan, you make some really excellent points, and I totally agree with you that we sort of we allow ourselves to be sort of in footstooled, if that's a word, by giving these people power that they don't necessarily deserve. So I agree with you. I think the same thing is going on with our money, which is very fishy, and that's probably another discussion. But in terms of Christianity, I was raised in a Christian environment, and I always thought that the Bible was stupid because I was raised in a scientific household. And I knew that the Earth was a spinning sphere, and I thought that the whole thing was stupid starting on page number 1. And so I think that that really does have a big effect on us, subconsciously. I'm not saying that we should necessarily buy every single thing that's in the King James Bible, per se. I'm not saying that, but if we've been sort of browbeaten our whole lives with anti-flat Earth stuff and anti-Bible stuff, and we just come to this conclusion that the Bible's stupid because obviously they were wrong about the world itself. How could they, how could we possibly expect them to be correct about anything else? And I've sort of looked back at societies in history who were thought of as great societies, but they were all pretty stupid too, right? Because they thought the Earth was flat and stationary. But when you actually come down and take a look at this, no, they're actually not that stupid after all. And in fact, it seems like we were the ones that were stupid to allow NASA that much leeway, and just to basically, it wasn't me either. I wasn't around when they launched the fake Apollo missions, but.
Yeah, and I could also add, too, that the Great Pyramids, as a replica of our perpetual energy machine we call Earth, were mapped, and the underground chambers would fill up with the oscillations of the waters of the deep, and that's actually how they powered the pyramids. They knew more about our flat, even the cardinal directions of the pyramids indicate the center, the most important measuring spot of the heavens. This world is alive, in my opinion, and I don't know if there's too many flat earthers talking about that.
Well, let's put it this way. In the book of Enoch, it says of how the Watchers themselves came down and taught men all these things. All these people that are hooked into this super high technology in their days, Francis Bacon, and a lot of these people have had ties to what they call a familiar spirit that would talk to them. A lot of this stuff is written down, from Tesla to him, to Edison. Some of these people have actually written in memoirs where they had an entity, a familiar spirit, that dealt with them and these technologies and enlightened them. And this was forbidden knowledge for us as far as God was concerned when those angels came down. Now, is it Nathan that was disagreeing with me? Is that who was?
Yeah,
on a biblical stance? And I'm not taking, I want to try and, I keep bringing the Bible into it because I end up there anyway, and I apologize. So I don't want to have this rotate all around that. But I see all these things as deception to keep Christ out. All these things are layers of an onion that actually keep people from believing in Christ, in my opinion.
I don't believe that could ever happen. The power has more. If the creator of this world really wants it known, you're not going to stop it with some semantic group or anti.
Exactly. It's a separation of the goats and the sheep. The goats are the ones who want the power now and have short-sighted nature and are selfish, and they will go down with their father. And the ones who have a long-term, eternal spark in their heart, it is something that they you know, and the bigger that spark, or the more that you fan that, it's just like that wolf thing. There's a wolf, there's a white wolf and a black wolf, the Indian says, and the one that you feed is the one that's going to win, you know, in his spirit. I don't know if you guys know that story, but whatever you feed is going to be your prominent, you know, what takes you in that direction. So I hope I got my point across there without being too long-winded.
The grass is always greener when you water it, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's very true. Anyone else thoughts on that topic? It's definitely a topic worth discussing. I've personally had my Christianity raised and affirmed through this. That's just me personally. I'm not saying everyone's going to come to that conclusion, but I'm sure that there's a creator now, me personally. Can I prove that? No. We can certainly prove that the Earth isn't a spinning sphere, and that does bring back some of these old arguments, that, for example, Christianity is stupid on, page 1, book 1, which I think that sort of rhetoric has affected us all, worldwide.
I just think it's a fallback. I think it's if you've got something like scientism telling us that, or scientism and tied into atheism, telling us that Christianity, the whole idea of God, that's all nonsense, But then the big joke, the big secret, the big spinning ball lie, if that's ever revealed, Mark Sargent described it as the Christians having flat Earth in their good china. Well, you have that, exactly that. So a lot of people, I'm not disrespecting anybody and their beliefs in this, and I've said already, I would describe myself as a Christian. So it's not like I'm kind of playing devil's advocate to a certain extent, although I do think this. You have a certain fallback, which is to say that you then fall back on all of the religious texts, which confirm that I completely agree. It's a flat Earth book. There's no two ways about that. But you then have to buy into all of the notions that suggests. If you have ultimate good and ultimate power and God and Jesus, then it's right there in the same text. You've got evil and devils and demons and all of the other things that go along with that. And further to that, like I said earlier, I'm sorry to just repeat myself, but we're told, and you only have to scratch the surface of what the media presents to us, that all the bad guys that you describe as being bad could take the Ronnie, the event skeptic argument that they're actually trying to help us, or maybe I'd say it was them holding back the floodgates. But ultimately speaking, you have to buy into that paradigm. There is a devil. There is supreme evil in that equation.
Well, true. From a Christian perspective, I don't think that the devil. I think that the devil has grown horns and a tail. I don't think that was ever depicted that way in any sort of, actual Christian or Hebrew text. I think that's more of this whole subterfuge that we've got going on.
Hollywood.
It really is. It's part of this Hollywood thing to empower Lucifer, and like Nathan had mentioned earlier, to give power to people who don't necessarily deserve it. We allow them to do it. It's official, and we sign off on it. And so that's what we get. But I think that this revelation here, flat Earth, is really sort of an Achilles heel for this whole beast system thing that we've sort of been touching on. And I don't know. I just really think that we should, again, not necessarily go and believe everything in the King James Version, because there are lots of poor translations even in that. But to look back at the Bible as maybe not such a stupid book for stupid people, but maybe there is some insight in there, and it is sort of convoluted, yes. But I think that the stories are true enough, or at least the message is true enough, or close enough to the original, whether that was Aramaic or Hebrew or whatever it was written in. To me, my Christianity's been affirmed, and that's really, that's just me. Everyone's going to take this in a different direction, but if we know that there's a creator, and then we have stories of this creator, sending his only son to save the world, and look at what changed after Christ. I mean, we mark our calendars by his birth, so obviously something happened there, and whether that was just another layer of deception, I don't think so. But after that, you certainly had the Roman Catholic Church. I believe there's good enough evidence to state this without saying I believe it, but I believe that the Catholic Church was sort of co-opted right from the beginning, right with Constantine, the Roman emperor who became the Christian Roman emperor and sort of co-opted Christianity, and we're left with the Vatican, which is the most anti-Christian religion or anti-Christian institution, I think, in this world.
Oh my Lord! Yeah, definitely. They brought us the Jesuits. Oh, enough said.
Yeah, they sing songs to praise Lucifer in their church while performing the ceremony.
Right.
If you look at their ceremonies, they are satanic. And this is kind of funny. Get that daggone fish off your head, because he's got the fish of Dagon on his freaking head.
But see, what they're doing is they're occulting the actual order of creation, and this is what I'm trying to say. I could care less about the stupid Mason Society. What I care about is the fact that they've been continuing an oral and ceremonial tradition of creation, and you could match this up basically with anything.
So you think that they're just mirroring a basic font where it's just here's what it is, and it's not necessarily. I'm not sure if I'm tracking you there.
Yeah, I don't even think they know, to be honest with you. If there's any Masons listening or whatever, the last time I seen one show up, he got pretty pummeled in the truth movement.
The Catholic Church, you mean? I think they know big time. I think that they're completely opposed to Christ. I think when in their core, okay, let's liken them to this. I will liken the Catholics to the Masons. The ones who are important know what's going on, and the rest of the 100,000 of them are just buffers. But the people who truly know what's going on, from the Jesuits to the black priest to the Pope, those guys know what they're doing. They know what their ceremonies mean, and they don't have anything to do with Christ. I just saw a thing that Jonathan Kleck did. It was pretty cool. He took that huge, if you guys check it out, he took their huge Vatican throne, and he broke down the depiction of it.
It was completely wrong, though. The Vesica Pisces is an inscribed movement of the movements of the planets over the square that they worship on. He was trying to say that it was a vagina, and he's totally off in left field. The monuments are all designed with the east to west movement of the sun. I don't know
what that too.
Yeah, for me.
Well, you know what really bothered me too? He keeps saying that we are fallen angels. We're not angels. Well, at least not in my perception.
And for me, with Jonathan Kleck, he seems to be promoting this. He's like an angel, and he's promoting false narratives, in my opinion. I'm sorry.
I believe you're 100% right. It's just like the Catholic Church. It's half true with a hint spice and nothing that you want. You know what I'm saying?
But actually, go ahead with what you were saying. He broke down the temple.
Well, he was breaking that down. He was showing all the different things, and you know what? I could see all that he was breaking down. It made sense to me until he got to the angel part. Now, the Vesica Pisces, or whatever the heck that thing was that he was talking about, I'm not real familiar with that. So you obviously have more information on that than I do, or background. So I can't speculate on that part.
I put out a video where I found that it showed how they mark up the shape of the Earth on the temple floor, and then as the planets move from east to west and transit the sun, they mark spots on the floor, and it draws out these shapes. And the Vesica Pisces, the flower of life, the pentagram, all of these shapes are actually symbols that they've. I don't think people understand.
Plus, they worship the zodiac signs too. They're into a lot of very interesting things that I'm not 100% on, but they don't worship Christ.
Well, I think that there's a lot of connections and similarities between the Masonic structure and the Catholic structure. And even if you look at our courts of law, and same thing for you guys over the pond there, it's all very much an ecclesiastical thing. If you go to court, it's if you actually break down what you've got there, it's almost exactly the same thing as if you go into a church. It's just a little bit more, it's sort of inverted on you, but.
It's basically, Morgile, sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
It's basically, as it states in the Bible, that they've corrupted creation and they've placed it with the spinning globe model and the true creation of. They practice it in their temples, the formations and the movements and the order of creation, and then they want us to believe that we're on a ball, you know.
Well,
I hear you.
we know better than that now. So that's where I think that we should really be looking ahead, and like Nathan said, stop giving these people power by assuming that they have power, and so there's nothing we can do about them. But if we, as people, actually sort of get together and say, hey, we want to stop the way things are going and change the way things are going, it's going to take more than what we're equipped with. It's going to take an act of God, if you will, I think.
Well, let's put it this way. God works through his people, and not. And Nathan included, everybody here, as a forum, we may disagree on certain personal preferences and religious things here and there, but we want truth. We are seeking the truth. So in this thought, as a forum here, how can we move forward from here, from dialogue about what we know is truth? The basic observation of flat Earth is undeniable. If you, what? Can you what? I don't know what you're saying. Go ahead. Yes, fine. I'm sorry. So where do we go from here? All these things that we're thinking about, and I was thinking about this before I took the call. What is the next step to have forward momentum where we're causing problems for these powers that be that we don't need in our lives, nor do we want, because we want options and freedom?
Well, I think that logistically, I don't know about you guys over there, over the pond. I love using that phrase. And there's no curvature on that pond either.
Yeah, right. No.
But I think that we do have a responsibility to push this truth out and to try to get it to new levels. But at the same time, I agree with you. Yeah, God works through his people. But then, that's supposing that there's a God. To me, I think that the idea of God just in a heliocentric universe altogether is just sort of it's incompatible, or at least with the Christian God.
Definitely. I had this conversation with my uncle, and I was trying to lead him to flat Earth, and the kind of conversation went something along the lines of, how can you have a God that says we are absolutely important, we're made in his image, we're the most important thing to him that's ever been, we're so important to God, and yet we are a speck of dust in amidst a whole soup of absolute nothingness that goes on for vastness and forever. And further to that, there's millions of other planets with humanoid-like aliens scattered around all over the place. But this particular speck of dust, that particular speck, that's special. That's just more special than everything else. It like you say, it's totally incompatible.
Yeah, it really is. It really truly is, and so that's why I just think it's a shame that I've wasted 30 some odd years of my life totally with my head up my butt in terms of what my belief system was, and so yeah, this revelation has changed me a lot over the last year, 14 months. And maybe if y'all, and I know that's sort of a personal thing, but have y'all sort of, I mentioned this earlier, but have y'all sort of felt that? Has anyone had a personal experience or anything that has been either uplifting or not so great? Or
I could relay something that, well, for the first few months after finding out we were living on a plane, I know I was the happiest I've ever been in my life that I can at least remember. That is, and it's just so striking just to have that kind of revelation, as you say, mainly on the premise that the world around us matches our observations, and sadly that's not something everyone agrees about. Until they're really understanding the proofs of this, a lot of people still think they see curvature, you know what I'm saying, things like this, and so many people just, I think the bigger problem is accepting how we could have been deceived, more so than accepting, that the whole model is wrong for many people.
Definitely. For me, just hearing the words flat Earth was enough, and foolishly, I assumed that if I went and told someone else, it would be as obvious for them as it was to me, because
Right.
I'm reasonably observant and looking around, so things clicked pretty quickly when I heard the notion of flat Earth. I mean, it was literally just Matt Powerland saying those two words, and that was quickly followed up, actually, which will bring me on to a little segue in a second, John, but to your video. So I remember, seeing, you had a video where you had a guy being interrogated on a chair that had a globe for a head.
Yeah.
Well, that for me was, part of that journey, seeing that video. I had no idea who you were at the time, but I knew you were a guy just making videos about the revelation that you'd come to. Now, you said, well, if I can just wake up one person, well, it's good that you're doing this on this channel, which is, 10,000 plus subscribers. Well, you're not just reaching one person. Quite the contrary, you're reaching quite a few. You're reaching people who, may not have even intended to come across your work, but yet you are definitely reaching them. And you're just one guy. I'm not trying to belittle that. I'm trying to big that up, the fact that one guy can achieve so much.
I've got lots of power. No,
well, it's not power. It's your own it's your own ability that you're expressing your own ability. It's been there all along. It's not like you've suddenly acquired power. Far from it.
No, I was totally kidding.
I know, but I want to qualify it anyway.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man, and I appreciate that, and I definitely agree. But my point is like, it doesn't, quantifying this is not. It's something that you can't quantify. It's like, well, how many people do you want to try to convert? Because it's a conversion process that the person has to stop what they're doing and go back and research all of the assumptions that they've taken their whole life. And it really takes a certain type of person with a lot of extra time on their hands, I reckon, or somebody very.
Sorry to interrupt, John, but like Kirsten just said, it's more not necessarily just the realization of flat Earth, because a lot of people get that bit and not get the higher implications. And also, you have to cope with the fact that you've been deceived at such a huge scale.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
consider this too. Most people don't care. They're going to wash their car and watch the game, and they don't give enough crap about anything other than getting through the week, watching the football game, going to the party this weekend. And they're so busy with monotonous BS, in my opinion, that is useless and unconstructive. And I believe that the group of us here desire more than just what we're given to us, because what we're given to us is not enough supplement.
But back to the Christian element. My uncle, he's a devout Christian, and when it came to the globe versus flat, he said exactly that. Well, what does it matter? And I had to say to him, if we're on a speck of dust spinning around infinite nothingness, then it could be that we're just another one of a million aliens. If it's flat, we're it.
Yeah, potentially, yeah.
Well, yeah.
Then you've got other lines of thought where, like, for all we know, there could be a honeycomb of worlds, in all different directions, or it could be something else.
What I mean, John,
some speculate that we are the center of the universe and the apple of God's eye, and I believe that this place is a dividing. This is the separating. This is kind of like the filter. In my opinion, no offense to you, Nathan. I think we're over the offense thing, so I don't take any offense from your honesty. Honestly, if you weren't being honest with me, you'd be deceiving me, and I would rather not hear that anyway. I don't like hearing what people want me to hear. I like hearing what you think. So I respect your opinion. And
I don't think anybody has to make any apologies just to express what they feel. I completely agree with you. It's one of those, it's open dialogue where you don't feel like, well, I can express my opinion, but I might get ridiculed. Nah, I think we're all decent human beings.
And I'd like to add in here, with the whole, as an echo again, but with the sharing of the flat Earth, it does seem that people need to come to the truth on their own. And as much as I try, I get the same response.
Oh yeah,
You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Well, yeah, I agree with Nathan in the fact that he said that they just don't see what does it matter. Besides the people that say what does it matter, or they don't care at all because they're too busy with other stuff, they look at you like you're crazy. If you look at the basic observations and don't get it, you're retarded, in my opinion. I'm sorry. It's too easy. The math is so simple. You know, the drops in elevation that there should be with a heliospheric plan, you're not seeing it. It ain't happening. The boat's not falling over the horizon.
And
The skyscrapers, you can see them at their horizon elevation. That's just
even an arc of a rainbow or a bridge or even the stars themselves, if they were circling around a circle, we wouldn't see them circle. They'd be parallel. Nobody ever brings this up.
Yeah,
that is an awesome point. I 100% agree with you. 100%. That is a good one.
Yeah, the star trails were a pretty easy one for me. Like, you know, Nathan, you said it only took you a day or two, and that's fast. I mean, I was at this pretty hard and heavy for a week until I came out the other end of that grinder. But you know, that was just me. Some people it might take longer, some people it might take shorter, but at the end of the day, we have to pick a side, right? I mean, and I don't think it's necessarily we have to pick a model, but we have to either pick a side of, okay, I'm going to go back into the, you know, into the matrix, into the pink goo, or I'm going to break free of the matrix, and you know, even if it does me personal injury, it doesn't matter, because I feel like we've all been sort of called to a higher purpose, and we should be held to a higher standard, or not that we're held to a higher standard, but that we should take that moral imperative and take this to the next level, which is going to be action. And I think that action.
I agree. I mean, it's an interesting one, because although it's not on flat Earth, it was a similar topic that I was talking about with Antonio the other night, and he was talking about false flags and hoaxes, and saying next time there's an event, so let's say there's an explosion, that, you know, there's an obvious hoax that we've all looked at and gone, it's an obvious hoax. Next time you hear someone mention it, say, oh, my next door neighbour was talking to me. He had a phone call from his sister, and they were actually doing it as a drill. Yeah, it's all a load of nonsense. It's just all a big joke. And that was kind of his idea, to sort of, you know, use the same propaganda they use against them. But my argument was, well, we should be held to a higher standard than that. You know, that's what they do. Yeah, you could argue fight fire with fire. If that's a tool they're using, why shouldn't we? But we should be held to a higher standard than that.
Well, let's put it this way. We already are, because they will not argue. They must ridicule and make us look like idiots through their media venues, because they have no facts to back up their shit. We absolutely have the facts. They will not discuss it. It's obvious. So when someone will not discuss it intelligibly with another group who's coming at them saying, hey, you guys are full of shit and this is how it is, and this is reality, and they won't even discuss it with you. Get an astrophysicist to debate with you. And John, you've been in that position. You schooled his ass. You schooled his ass so bad, he didn't even it was like he didn't do his homework. It's like he came to school without doing his damn homework. And he looked like an idiot. And Art Bell, man, I don't do Coast to Coast. Since that show, I don't do Coast to Coast. That was bullshit.
Tell us a bit about your interview with Art Bell.
Oh man, it was a barrel of monkeys. No, actually, it was kind of fun.
Can you come?
So this was I was only really a few months into this, and really it's a journey, because you know, it might have taken me a week to come to this conclusion, but I'm still learning new stuff all the time. But I was pretty new into this, a few months. I knew my basics enough to where I know how to argue. I think I probably do better with arguing than I do with sitting around talking, because that's just me. I'm an argumentative person, believe it or not. But I had a lot of fun with it, because I knew that I had the correct position, and nothing he could say was going to debunk this, and it could only possibly make him look stupid. And I probably didn't do the best job as possible, because, well, they had control of the call. It was 2-on-1, and shut up,
dude.
Larry.
You had control. You schooled him. They couldn't shut you down. The guy came to you with observations from his buddies, his astronaut buddies. Well, I've been told this by this person. Dude, you going to come to the baseball field without a bat like that? You have no information to back it up. He was unprepared, and if he thought you were going to be some dumb knucklehead from nowhere. And when I heard that, I was appalled at the way that you were treated by Arbella. It amazed me because he's usually so unbiased. It's not funny.
Oh yeah, so you're a lizard from the year 2063, really? That's interesting. Yeah, they get
Right.
flat Earth on there, and yes, so there was definitely that. But I mean, I guess it really did. There was a lot of listeners that night, and a lot of people didn't hear it the way you heard it. A lot of people didn't hear it the way that it was. They heard it the way that it was presented, and so. I kind of got pissed about that, and I did a remix of the whole thing and just sort of picked apart the biggest points that he made, and some of the points that Harvard astrophysicist and on multiple advisory boards for NASA, Dr. Josh Grinley, the best that he could come to the table with were arguments like the mass of ships appearing over the horizon before the hole as observed by Christopher Columbus, which that's like Flat Earth 101. So yeah, he was totally unprepared. The arguments that he brought to the table, I think I did a fair enough job, putting question into his arguments, poking holes into his arguments. So that was my position, and I knew that without curvature and without axial rotation, he doesn't have anything. But they didn't want to stick on those points. They wanted to get onto other points.
Well, see that, and with that in mind, that shows you the brevity of this, the length, the girth of the lie, because someone had him under their thumb. He's not impressed with people. He doesn't kiss ass. He kissed that astrophysicist's ass.
Yeah.
In a bad way, completely, and that shows that you have struck a nerve. Everybody who is willing to speak about this, you're very bold, John, because most people are afraid to even go there, and especially to present it. But you're smart. You've shown people the way. You've done the calculations. You've shown the basic observations that your channel's what the first 5 minutes. I didn't need any more. I was like, they're flat. I'm like, you're
Awesome.
freaking flat.
And and really, that's sort of the way that I designed my videos. The first video I did was just like I had to put something out there. I've maybe put up two or three YouTube videos ever in years, and I just don't do videos. But I had to put something out about this, and so I did. I took about a week and put out that first video, and it did fairly well. It still does very well. It gets a lot of views, but what I did is I took all of the logical questions that come after that. Well, what about this? What about that? Because most of that stuff I had already sat down and gone through my own personal checklist, which was pretty damn long. I had to go through a long, long checklist to make sure that the ground I'm standing on is actually stationary. But once I came to that conclusion, for sure, then there's almost like it is empowering because you know the truth. You're aware of the truth. You don't have to pull theory out of the sky in order to make your theories work, right? Theories on top of theories, and pull some more theories out of the sky to get those theories to work. And don't forget about dark matter and gravity. I mean, all these theories, they're not necessary.
Plus, add millions and millions of years so you have time to bring out the next equation.
Oh, and yeah, my time zone changed. Anyone else experienced that recently? I'm now GMT -4 instead of 5.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Yeah. I was trying to figure out how that works. I guess it's a natural, regular thing that they do. I guess it changes once a year. That's pretty stupid, though.
That's
Why
part
would
of the
they
course.
change it?
They've got to distort those lines. Can't let you know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, I wonder if that's it. Did anyone, like, seriously, did anyone else have their GMT change in the last 6 months? 3
Yeah,
months?
we have it all the time. We're currently on British summertime.
Okay. Well, no, I'm saying that my GMT went from -5 to -4. So
Now, is one of you talking about daylight savings and the other talking about actual time zone?
yeah, Greenwich Mean Time.
Yeah.
I've been -500 forever, for years, and it just changed to -4 in the last 3 months.
Because it's wrong all over the place. We've seen
Yeah.
this loads of times. So we only came across this from trying to tie up show times and make sure that the people in the States got the right time. And depending on your source, you check it, and it's wrong. and occasionally they'll correct it, but it's all just part of the same fudging, distorting time and where it is. I mean, in terms of the amount of timelines on time and date, there's 27 time zones. It's just nuts.
Well, the timeline also is banked on the heliospheric, so it doesn't apply to us necessarily anyway. And maybe it does because it worked its way out. But yeah, that.
Well, you see, here's the thing, though. In either model, 12 o'clock noon is always when the sun is at its, at its highest azimuth.
Point. Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's actually not true.
Well, shouldn't it be true, though? I mean, technically, it should be high noon at every meridian.
In the south, during the solstice, the sun is at its lowest horizon point, all the way across the board, Earth-wide. And in the north, the sun reaches its zenith in the most northerly sky, so we're looking straight up, and the sun seems to rise higher in the summer in the north.
Right. Yeah.
Is anybody else concerned about this? Oh, go ahead. If you have a thought, go ahead. I just got something I'm thinking about.
It's more like 2:30 or 3 o'clock is the zenith, Morgile, for me in Toronto.
And that's on, I'm sorry, which coast? West Coast?
It's East Coast time.
East
The
Coast.
same as New York. It's like 8 hours.
So you must have jumped back, because I know it's been GMT -5 for years. I had to put that into every user account I ever set up for my business for years. And so it's just kind of funny to me that it would just change one day. And so to me, yeah, that makes a lot of sense that they're trying to get, their timeline to match up with our 24-hour clock. But I think that we should do it the other way around. We should just simply set our clocks to the sun. I mean, that would be a whole lot easier, wouldn't it, than having, noon be when it's at the 2:30 position or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it goes on and on. You've got leap years. What a load of nonsense.
Yeah, indeed it is.
I have a concern, though. My concern here lately is the flat Earth going stale and the media making us look dumb enough and then kind of overpowering the movement. Does anybody else feel that
yeah, there's
like, how do we move forward? How do we move forward and keep this relevant and fresh so that it isn't something that they can just bulldoze under?
Well, and I think, like I was mentioning before, I think that we need to take this into the realm of action, and I don't mean anything violent, but I mean we need to have ends, and I think that the score of those ends should be the first off, get rid of the Federal Reserve Bank, second off, get rid of the IRS, the CIA, and that's just for starters. What do y'all think, or at least Nathan? I know we lost. It's Rob, right?
Yeah, he's getting up early. He did say in the chat he was.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no worries. But you guys are having to deal now with the whole Euro scam thing, and the World Bank is being propped up to be this huge central bank that's going to be issuing everyone's currency. It appears. How do you feel about your currency over there?
I think it's a nonsense. I think the whole monetary system is a big, massive distraction. There's lots of people that say, well, the bankers still see those numbers as important to them, and therefore it's relevant. But it is just another structure, another layer of deception, another, something to keep us busy. Money is just like that. And in terms of, well, what you were saying earlier, is it Che? Che. You were saying, well, how can you? What's the importance to you, if I put it as a question? So you're saying I'm worried about it going stale. Well, for you as an individual, forget everybody else for a moment. Has it empowered you to do something more?
From the knowledge of flat Earth?
Yeah, has it given you, like I'm trying to attribute it to John and his videography, but I'm saying for you as an individual, has it given you more emphasis to do stuff, or has it helped you as an individual? So forget the powers controlling people.
Yeah.
Detach yourself from that.
Let's put it this way. It is, like I said, a cog to me. It's a part and a working member of something that I'm glad that I have knowledge of it. What it has opened up, a can of whoop-ass on the fact that we're deceived on all levels. From our history, which is not written by actual events because the events are predicated on cause and effect by people who start and initiate these things, from false flags like we're having over here and in France and everywhere, to all these things. So it is empowering to have a slice of truth, but it is but one slice. It is a big slice, don't get me wrong, okay? But it is a part of my overall makeup as a person where I'm like, okay, well, all this is true, that we've been deceived on all levels from society, how my country is not a country. My country, if you look at the United States, is a corporation. It's
Sure,
not.
but you hit the nail on the head when you said you've been deceived. So if you simply, again, from a personal perspective, you turn off your TV, you're no longer being deceived. If you cut those people out of your life, no contact ever again, literally, your life is enriched. Your fulfillment in terms of what you do with your life, your time. If you want to bring money into that, that's fine too. But, you know, you could equally say, well, I use my time to provide services in barter. So, you know, once you detach yourself from these people that you're attributing power to and worried about their control over others, well, you're still back in that web. Whereas once you detach yourself,
yeah, right.
So that's what Flat Earth gives me. This is the point I'm trying to bring it to. Is you
No, I
detach
agree.
yourself from all of those nefarious things and just literally completely ignore them. Detach yourself completely.
And I do that now. I'm not a TV guy. I watch Netflix, so I pick what I want to watch. And I don't watch too much TV because I'm really busy. But I 100% agree. You have to ignore that. You can't watch the mainstream media. You can't believe what they say. They're trying from Hollywood to the nightly news. All those people are appointed. All those people are in positions. They're all there to make this whole situation look like something it isn't. And I can see through that veil now. I've seen enough layers to see that all of it is connected. I know the symbols. I know where, going back to Luciferian things, he marks his territory with his symbols, and his people are promoting that type of lifestyle. I can see it now.
If you think about it in this way, so if you're on the street and you see the guy doing the 3-card Monty, right, and he rips you off, he rips your money off, and you've lost your $5 to the guy who's a street performer. At that point, once he's got your money off you, you've got a couple of choices. You can stand there and point to the crowd and go, look at this evil sod, and moan and come back the following day and do the same thing over and over again. Or you can cut your losses, walk away, never go near the stand again, and you've best $5 you've ever spent because you'll never go near that table again.
Exactly. Making the lemonade.
Hey, Che, we got Antonio on. Antonio, I see you sitting there patiently. How you been doing, man?
I'm good, thanks, John.
Have you been on long?
Have I? No, I've just come on.
Okay, all right. So you didn't miss much. No, I'm kidding. It's good to have you though, man. What you been up to?
Yeah, thanks. What I've been up to actually is sleeping. So that's why I missed the start. Nathan passed me a link. I missed the start. Sorry, man. But I've been listening. You know, whilst my cogs started turning, having a coffee. You know, relaxing. So, but I've been on maybe a minute or two. But all's good. All's good. I'm enjoying the chat.
Good.
I mean, the actual conversation that's going on now. Nathan's on fire.
Yeah, man, I appreciate Nathan carrying it for me, man, really, and it's good to have you both on here. And Antonio, I'll let you get up and get your coffee going, but so far we've hit on a bunch of topics, and we still have just over an hour left. So did anyone that I know we've sort of had a lot of topics just go by. Did anyone have anything that they jotted down they wanted to jump back to real quick, or?
You know what? I don't know lately what you guys have been talking about, but who has taken notice or gives any validity to this Mandela effect? Has everybody seen any of these observations?
Yeah, I've looked into it, and I'm not really that. At first, I was like, that's neat and interesting, and wow, that would be a foolish thing to go back and change. Go back in time to change that. But hey, I could have sworn he said, "Luke, I am your father." That's the only one. That's the only one that I'm still sort of beside myself on. But even Mandela himself, I remember that he was never. I remember him never being killed. I just remember him being jailed, and that was sort of like this big, huge deal. And lots of wealthy people tried to get him, let out, and it took a long time, but he was finally let out. That's the storyline that I remember with Mandela, and it's the same storyline that my wife remembers, and lots of.
Did you see the JFK assassination, the redo? It went. There were 4 people in that car. I remember, and that wasn't even my era. Now there's 6 people in the car, and it looks like she shoots him. It's the craziest thing I ever saw, because that is not where I remember.
Yeah, I've seen one where it looks like the driver turns around and shoots him, and I've seen one where
even that footage was released 10 years after a la the hoaxes. Even you remember the book about the before the Titanic. I think the Mandela effect is just a giant. I don't know why every time I talk, there's an echo.
It goes away. It goes away right away. So.
Yeah, we don't get the echo, so if it's hurting you, it ain't hurting us.
Okay, sorry guys.
Yeah, no problem. I get it sometimes too. It's kind of annoying, like you'll be talking and you'll hear yourself talking what you just said. It's very odd. But yeah, I wasn't too taken away by the Mandela effect, although I still, I will admit, I've watched Star Wars many, many times during my life, many times. And I could have sworn that he said, "Luke, I am your father." That's the only one. All the other stuff I wasn't familiar with, or it didn't do it for me. But some people seem to be very convinced that this is a phenomenon. I'm not too convinced, but who knows?
Right, both Antonio and I can tell are itching to jump in on this. You go first, Antonio.
Okay, so what happens with the Mandela effect? You have John. You just mentioned that. I'm a big fan of Star Wars. And I too thought it was Luke. I just hadn't paid enough attention. And when people said, "Oh, look, they've changed it to no," I'm like, "Oh, what? Wow." And I looked into it and I got sucked into it a little bit. But then there are the other Mandela effects, which are basically other people telling me what they thought things were. Yeah? I have no say in it. I'm talking about things that I don't know anything about. Films I've not watched or books I've not, the Berenstein, I've never seen those books. I haven't got a clue what they're talking about, so I'm having to believe them. And what's happening is you're having more and more thrown into the Mandela effect. Oh, do you remember this event? You say, no. So, well, this is how it was, and now this is how it is. You're believing somebody else. But the big thing is, this is a big, preamble for the simulation hypothesis. The whole Matrix, the whole everything is just a simulation and there are non-player characters, which is a modern retelling or a parallel retelling of Luciferianism, believe it or not.
Well, like the Berenstain Bears, I remember reading them as very young, and I don't remember how it was spelled. So you're right. I felt the same thing about that. I was like, it could have been spelled either way, and I wouldn't know the difference. So that that didn't do it for me. There was really only the one, and I looked into this a pretty good deal, and I watched several videos on it, read some articles on it, and it just didn't do it. But you said you had an opinion on it, Nathan? Oh, you're muted. You're muted, man.
Yeah, sorry about that.
All right.
Yeah, definitely. It's just a load of nonsense. I mean, the title itself, calling it Mandela, is designed to stir. It's designed to cause controversy. So just the title itself. I mean, I've not got anything against simulation theory. I even had Antonio and I had Mark Sargent on. We discussed it at length. The positives, the negatives. Ultimately, I don't believe it. I don't believe in simulation theory. And I remember early on, looking at Mandela effect, knowing what it was, precisely what it was, and drawing that conclusion, and assuming everybody else knew it was just an expansion on simulation theory. And I'll name and shame Amir, insanity is sanity. I pointed this out to him in a comment, and he said to me, nobody is associating Mandela effect with simulation theory. And it's like, no, I appreciate that. That is the problem. nobody's associating it for what it is. It's just another repackaged bullshit theory that was rubbish. You know, it always was rubbish back then, and it still is rubbish now. It's not a great theory, but it's been given this title, this horrible title, Mandela Effect. That particular part of it really gets my back up.
Yeah.
Sorry, John. What the Mandela effect does to people who are sucked into it is it tells them that the real world can be shifted around retroactively by nefarious forces, perhaps using CERN, perhaps using whatever, you know, incantations. The truth is, here in the UK, we have pub quizzes, okay, where you go with your mates. I don't know if you have it in the US. You go with your friends, and there's a DJ, and he asks questions, and the winners, you know, you make little teams, you get a sheet, and they ask all kinds of questions, okay? This is all of the so-called Mandela effects are questions that would be on a pop quiz, that might be on a pop quiz. Like, in Star Wars, in The Empire Strikes Back, does Darth Vader say, "Luke, I am your father," or "No, I am your father"? That's one of those things, you know. Or what does Darth Vader say to Luke after he's cut his hand off? Yeah.
I gotta say though. Sorry.
Say again.
I gotta say all of the things. Let's put it this way: whether it be true, whether it be a global psyop of some crazy sort or simulation thing, I'm not real familiar with that. I must say that all of the observations I saw were opposite of what I had remembered. But all those things are predicated on my memory. And they're not observations that people had told me about. I was genuinely familiar with all of the observations I was shown, and at least in my personal memory, they were all the opposite.
And,
so whether it be a psyop phenomena or not, I did see some type of a difference.
So when
John
we go
got to the point early
I
on when John said, if I could go back in time, when he was talking about Star Wars, well, let's just extrapolate that out a little bit. Go back in time. So we've given this idea of timelines that someone could go back in time and have the timeline be altered. Well, where's this notion come from? Well, it's come from all the same bullshit programming that we watch when we're watching Star Wars or Back to the Future or all of the shows I listed. These notions are very familiar to us, almost too familiar. Well, there's a very good reason for that.
Well, the esoteric meaning of Mandela would be the Hindu term for circle. The Hindu Buddhist meditations is where they raise their consciousness and they fix themselves to the sacred circle. So geometric designs and stuff like that, the Mandalas, show a triangle with a Hindu inside a circle, which represents the merging of male and female forces. So this is what the elite are using against us, in my opinion.
Wow, that was good observation, buddy. Thanks for bringing that up.
Just wanted to add
that was good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, I was I don't know. I was sort of taken in by it a little bit, and then I really did go back and think it through and check, you know, was I being misled, you know, the Berenstein thing, and every one of them, you know, it could have gone either way. There was the one, and again, that was the Luke Skywalker thing, right? But you're right. I mean, it could have been something as simple as, like, I don't know, a bar owner that does those, you called them pop quizzes, we call them trivia. We call it trivia here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so trivia, yeah, we do that here too. That's a lot of fun.
Check this. Okay,
so find the trivia answer that everyone gets wrong, and then put out a social media misinformation campaign based on researching what people get often wrong.
Or it could be somebody out there on the internet, an individual, okay? Because we always forget the power that the individual has. So it could be as simple as one individual starting a meme, okay, and then it just running wildfire. No nefarious organization directing things. It could. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying there is no way that we can know, and we can't know that it's run by the government or some nefarious organization or an individual. But I'm saying that when we're looking at who could be doing this, it could be the individual, and then anybody who pushes it acts as a shill, unknowingly. Because the truth is this: if you were watching Star Wars, okay, on your own. And you're there, and today you're watching it with subtitles, okay? and you're there, and you're just reading along, and you're loving it, and it says, "No, I am your father." You go, "Huh? I thought he said Luke," and
Yeah.
that's it. That's all
Right.
that you would have thought. You'd have gone, "Huh."
Well, hey, check this out. I saw a picture today. This has to do with Mandela effect. This picture was a CERN physicist sitting in his office at CERN. He had two placards or pictures, big cardboard cutouts on top of him. The first one said Bond 1, and the second one was a picture of Nelson Mandela. Okay? And Bond 1. So if you go to James Bond, the first James Bond, this just shows you that either somebody knows something prior to this effect, or they're just effing with us. Because the first James Bond's name was Nelson. And then he shows that picture of Mandela. And he's either laughing at us because we're stupid and we're believing the psyop, or these people knew ahead of time what they were doing. Did anybody see that picture of the that porthole kind of thing going on when they were doing when they ramped it up to 40? That was some crazy stuff I was looking at.
No, I didn't see it.
I tell you what I remember. I remember Alex Jones saying, "The world is going to end. They're going to make a black hole at CERN."
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Yeah, and something that Nathan said in terms of time travel. This is something that I don't know. I thought it was just sort of a nice little treat. Are everyone's familiar with the Back to the Future movies?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so theoretically, time travel would be possible only on a stationary plane, because if you were to travel from whatever year back 25 years, well, if you maintain the same space time, then you're going to be somewhere off in the middle of nowhere.
Yes,
You're
Red
in the middle
Dwarf
of the
does this,
galaxy,
John.
right? Yeah, you'll be off.
So in Red Dwarf, they got around this. So you can't have just a time traveling device. You also require a faster than light device in order to be able to travel anywhere and any when.
Yeah.
So Red Dwarf got around that.
Oh, okay. Well, and the thing is, if you go back and watch Back to the Future, the original one, they've got some flat Earth hints in there, and the whole idea of going back in time, if such a thing were possible, I think it would only be possible if the Earth was stationary, because if the Earth was zipping through space along with the sun, along with the galaxy, then if you went back 25 years at that place, the galaxy would have theoretically never made it that far yet. So you'd be out in the middle of nowhere. So I guess what the point is Back to the Future, the movie, or time travel in general, would only be possible on a stationary plane. So maybe that sort of thing is now technically possible, or theoretically possible, when before it was an impossibility. Right?
The very fact that
I believe the doors are opening. I think that...
Sorry to interrupt you here. I think the very fact that we're discussing it is part of the predictive programming that they've given us. So in my mind, and this is just my ideas, it's not that I know this, or in my mind I see the next level of dissection being parallel universes, parallel, flat, whatever you want to call it. I'm sure that Flat Earth would sit in there quite nicely, based on what you've told us already. And
well, then, you can
Mandela and simulation and all of those things tie into it.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. What I was going to say, and I'll let you go, Kristen, too, is that, hell, now I don't know what I was going to say. Go ahead, Kristen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'll get it back.
No, now that's going to happen to me too. Darn it, it's catching.
Okay, so we went from Timeline to Back to the Future, and then Nathan, you mentioned something I was going to... I lost it. Oh, well.
Okay. See, I agree with Nathan. I think I'm gonna say it in a different way, but I think they would. I agree with him about the predictive programming, along that it's no different than all the other pre-programming about space, all that kind of stuff through science fiction movies and materials, whatever, books, all of that. And I think they would love for us to believe in time travel, and parallel universes are related, obviously, as Nathan just made the point. All of those things tie together. Certainly time travel depends on parallel universes, to be more clear on that point. And interestingly, this does tie into, in a roundabout way, the topic I wanted to talk about tonight, but not directly. Just in steps we could get there. But I definitely want to talk about time travel, so I'm glad it's come up, even
Yeah.
though not what I was going to start with tonight. I wanted to look at that image, but that may not be appropriate tonight. It
Oh,
depends on
no,
if it
it totally.
naturally makes sense. So,
No, it's totally appropriate, and if you want, you can screen share. And just one thing I was going to mention, I rudely interrupted Nathan, is that the Vedic cosmology, that the ancient, I guess, Eastern Indian sort of cosmology has different layers of Earths upon Earths, and we're just one of these layers, and there's lots of other worlds. That's beyond our scope of proving. We can't even, we don't even know what's going on in the Antarctic, really. And so, to go beyond that and say, oh, there's probably layers of Earth, like a big layer cake, I think it's premature, and I have to agree. So, just
well,
wanted to mention that.
a couple more things I wanted to mention regarding this, because about the Mandela effect. Looking into it, they're seeming to want us to believe that it's attributed to some sort of time travel, yes, and that it's about parallel universes. And so again, that is where we're hearing it again, and they're starting to normalize it. And even in that video, you may have seen that sort of maybe went viral, I'm not sure, but with the celebrities that ride around in the car with the host where they sing songs, and they're all ready to sing the end of the Queen song, and then it doesn't happen the way they expect. And so the video is used to kind of laugh at the Mandela effect and how, but just, again, sort of normalize it. And the more they normalize things by poking fun at it, the more it sort of, has a better chance to just sink into people's subconscious, but still be there, even though they may not have bought into it. And, over time, that has its effects. Now, why would they want us to believe in time travel? This is the bigger question, in parallel universes. And I believe it's a fairly simple answer. Just like with the heliocentric concept, it is something that makes us feel very out of control. It introduces another element of chaos into our existence, and that's where the idea that somebody could go back in time and change all these things, all these
stupid trivial things.
It implies that they can change serious things, but the idea is that I think the implications are even more perhaps formidable when you think about the future context of it, where the idea that events can be predetermined and things like this. So it's like, that changes the concept of what is the purpose of life if things are out of our control and or predetermined, and things along these lines. And so all of these things are lending to a sense of powerlessness, I think, that we end up with on an individual level, where more and more we end up just giving our authority away, our power, so to speak, to people who tell us what is reality, which is what they assume that they have license over. This is what we're all subject to. I think this is why a lot of people can't even believe what their own eyes see, because they're already surrendered to the authority that tells them we're on a spinning ball our whole lives. And so they're just not going to question it. And that's a very sad state of affairs, and not to offend anyone, but it would just be good if we can free our own mind enough to ask the questions that need to be asked and not just accept the information we're given. And usually it's without even a real explanation, most of it. I've noticed that all throughout my life. It's just amazing the way information is given to us,
Oh,
but not to go on tangents,
yeah,
but
I agree.
Make great points.
No, it's very deep psychological programming, and the subconscious mind is so much more powerful than we tend to think it is, because it's going on in the background. But the subconscious mind is responsible for just so much information being passed through it and processed, and then you have things like dreams, and we really don't understand those and how they operate. But the subconscious level is being sort of played with, I think, not just through mass media, not just through education, but through a variety of tactics that they use to get us to come to these conclusions, or to have these discussions, and to go down these lines of thought in terms of time travel and this and that. So yeah, it could just be like Nathan said, and I tend to agree with you on that, Nathan, that it's just a bunch of bull. But if it's unlocking in people like this idea that, oh, time travel's possible, and oh God, if they could change Star Wars, then who knows what they did. Well, if they had a time machine, they've already done what they're going to do, so there's no stopping it. But I just don't see. I don't know. I don't see us ever being wise to any ripples in the space-time continuum or the flatty time continuum.
Do you know?
Well,
You know what, John? Sorry, Ben. If you think about what the whole Mandela effect has done, if we just look at it pragmatically, it has made people think, Jesus, what can scientists do? How powerful are they? They can change the past, and what they're doing, they must be trying it out by changing freaking book titles and stuff. But this is how powerful scientists are, because nobody's sitting there thinking, wow, the divine consciousness must be trying something out. Nobody's thinking that. Everybody's thinking, look, they must be using CERN, they must be using HARP, they must be using a combination of things. And the truth is, no, none of it. That's just the bullshit that Nathan referred to is this. We then swing, we have this quirk, okay? It's nothing. The truth is, it's nothing. If people weren't saying, oh my God, Mandela effect, we would individually be saying, oh, that's interesting. I thought it said Luke. That's it. That's what we would be doing individually. But now it's this big thing. Now we've heard CERN thrown in there, this mega powerful thing. Now the thoughts are veering towards what can scientists do? And the truth is, they can't change freaking book titles in the past. They can't change films. It's just things that the authority, which is now scientism, is trying to impress us with. But even if you think about what CERN does, it's got nothing to do with it. The reason people are talking about CERN is conspiracy theorists like us notice something. We try to find the reasons for it. We can't find the reasons. We see in the news that CERN is doing something, and at some point somebody goes, oh, it must be CERN. That's totally invalid. There's no reason to think CERN is doing it. First, there's no reason to think something's actually happening. And second, there's no reason to think that if there was something, it's CERN with its scientists.
Have you guys seen
Totally.
Terminator? Do you remember Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines?
Sure.
You've got the female Terminator. Well, they show us a Hadron Collider. So there's a scene where they're underground and they have to power up this Hadron Collider, or what similar device, great big circular underground particle collider, and they have to pin it to it. So you've got this time-traveling movie giving you images of a machine that's like CERN.
Yeah.
Well, it could even be
those ideas, because when we watch a movie, and yeah, I've seen Terminator 3 as well. We'll watch that movie. We may not even we may see those scenes that you just described and not really pick up on them, and store it in the back of our subconscious somewhere, so that 10, 15, 20 years later, we come up with what is an original thought, or what we perceive to be an original thought, but was actually seeded by that original subliminal message. So that is exactly how that works. And I've even been, very much looking at CERN. I'm convinced that is a fraud, just like NASA. And the reason for that is because I just don't think that the whole atomic system works. The theoretical atomic system is pretty much like little heliocentric models making up every cell of your body. And I think that there is no good evidence for that. I think it's theory, and the numbers work in terms of the the exterior electrons, the valence electrons, match up based on these numbers that they've got all figured up. But it's just theory. We've never imaged an actual atom, and so for people to say, "Oh, well, CERN is, they're accelerating particles and they're going to smash them at high velocities and create conditions like the universe was moments after the Big Bang that never happened."
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the thing is, you have this theoretical Big Bang that never happened. And with theoretical physicists, what they do is they conjure up a thought based on the false, or at least very flawed, theory of relativity. So they believe that. They then come to an assumption that something must be a natural result of a sequence of events. they then send it down to, we've seen this in the Big Bang Theory, the TV show that Nathan mentioned earlier, that the theoretical physicists are the ones at the top of the physics pyramid. They think of something and pass it down and have the experimental physicists see whether they can manifest this to prove or disprove the new theory. So the Hadron Collider is just a big version of that. It's basically theoretical physicists saying, look, if the Big Bang happened, then it must have happened by some process. Let's make a huge device that could at least demonstrate to us what that process was. The truth is, the whole Big Bang didn't happen. And no matter what they can create sparks, I'm sure. I'm sure they can create all kinds of stuff. But they can't create something that will actually truly validate the Big Bang Theory, because the Big Bang Theory starts with zero, and you can't have zero leading on to something. That's
Well, and I think with CERN, I think it's probably a lot like NASA in a sense that most of the scientists and stuff working there, they don't have a clue that they're just getting randomly generated charts out of a machine. Nobody's inside of that machine when it's powered up and running, right? And so it's all very much theoretical with printouts or however they get their data, and they'll sift through that data for years and years when it really could have just been randomly generated or whatever, but it's certainly not going to prove anything like a Big Bang, especially when you realize its truth, and that's why I concluded a while ago that CERN was a hoax. I haven't dedicated as much time as I probably should have to it, but when you've got something like NASA, I mean, CERN is sort of secondary. That's nowhere near the cost over the years.
So, do you know what? Have you read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love that book. The movie was awful with Mos Def, but the book was good.
Yeah, the
original the original BBC movie I actually liked, but not the new one that with Mos Def. It was pretty stupid.
Yeah, it was. But for anybody who hasn't read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has this idea that there was a group of humanoids, some kind of group, who wanted to know what the meaning of life, the universe, and everything was. So they asked the computer. They had a huge computer, and the computer said, okay, yeah, I can tell you the answer. You'll have to wait several million years. So they all die, but there's this ceremonial, belief-like, religious waiting for the answer. The answer eventually arrives, and the answer is 42. And they're all like, what the hell does that mean? And the computer says, well, if you want to know what that means, you're going to have to create a different kind of computer that will render to you a meaning that you can attribute to the number 42.
Spherus ratio.
Yes. Yes.
Simple.
So this is when Slatty Bartfast creates this new planet computer, which is the Earth, which is being run by the mice. And the whole reason for that is to render a result for the question of life, the universe, and everything. That's basically a joke about CERN. It's Douglas Adams saying, look, you have theoretical physicists asking questions, some of which don't have an answer, but they can create all kinds of devices to arrive at answers, none of which will make sense, and will continue to have to be kicked down the road, So let's say that they did find the Higgs boson. Okay, now what? Now they have to have something else that involves CERN. So, okay, and then what? They have some other result. Okay, and then what? Then they'll have to have some other. And it will just be a continuous chain of events, exactly like NASA. We have to continue to receive all of this funding, otherwise we won't be able to arrive at the next point.
Or, further down the line, there's a problem, because unfortunately it would seem that we might have had a timeline change. Now, we've detected timeline changes before, and everybody will be happy to hear this. They'll have all heard it before. It'll all seem perfectly normal.
Oh, we live in the time change era. instead of the space
time warp again.
Yep. I thought about that recently. Wow.
Yeah, so we have it in literature we have a big joke, because it's a joke, it's a brilliant comedy, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the whole series of books. It's freaking funny, very, very funny. In that book, the universe, the god of the universe is actually a hyper-intelligent shade of blue caught in a prism. That's the god of that universe, okay? And in that universe, you have these guys who want to know what everything's about. So they make this computer. The computer gives them the answer. The answer says they have to make a planet to find the answer. They make a planet. Eventually, when the answer is arrived at, it gets destroyed by accident by some other. It's just a big, long, it's a shaggy dog story, as we call it in the UK. But all kinds of elements that are very apt for reality. Just like in Catch 22. The book after Catch 22 is called Closing Time. In that book, one of the characters sells invisible, indetectable warplanes to the US military. Now, they don't actually exist. It's a con. What they do is they bring an airplane carrier with a drawing of a plane on the ground, you know, on the platforms, so that people won't cross this area because, you know, maybe they get electrified or something. And that's it. They're selling something that doesn't exist. And that is Joseph Heller's way of saying, this is freaking NASA and the war machine. This is what they do. They tell you they have these things, and they can't discuss any of the details, you know, national security. But thank you for the money. And that's what CERN is.
Yeah, and you know, if the USA was going to host CERN, or it was going to be placed here first, but they couldn't get the budget up for it, or something along those lines, maybe the US was like, okay, yeah, we've got our hands full with NASA here, guys, so y'all can take this one over there in the Netherlands, or whatever. Yeah, so it did get built over there. I don't know, it was very high cost. Nothing close to what NASA's done over the decades, but very high cost, and I think that most importantly, what it does is it pigeonholes scientists, you know, really brilliant minds who have, you know, sucked in all these assumptions, and you know, they're going to focus on these numbers coming out, you know, printed out of this machine that, for all intents and purposes, could be just a random number the most expensive calculator ever built.
Yes. Yes.
Have you ever seen what they produce? I mean, have a look at the images that CERN produced. It's just a load of dots and lines, like from an Amstrad. It just looks like garbage.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Well, look at how much of the alternative media community is focused on what they say CERN is really up to. They say it's smoke and mirrors that CERN is trying to recreate the Big Bang. And they say what they're really trying to do is, you know, open a portal to another dimension and all that business. So what's your thoughts on that? Is this just all fear porn because they keep the whole?
It's exactly the same principle as telling us that there's aliens. It's the same. You push aliens, the nonsense bit, into the alternative media, but you let it simmer. Let it simmer away. Well, you have CERN that's obviously government-controlled and legit, but you let the alternative media talk about stuff that follows along the rhetoric, follows along with the next big lie. So by saying it opens portals, well, that's beautiful. It ties in nicely to what they're going to tell us 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, whenever they're going to tell us. So long as it's kept in the alternative media, well, aliens, if Flat Earth gets out into the mainstream populace and is commonly understood, well, then aliens, they're probably not quite so good in that model. You know, if for the sake of argument there are aliens that are coming from across the plane, you still need to keep that kind of under wraps. So you need other plans in place. You know, the heliocentric model's got to be kept up and maintained for a reason. There's a deception there. None of us know what that reason is, really. None of us.
Well, if there are indeed aliens coming here in flying saucers, which lots of people believe now, and lots of people have claimed to have seen, and it could very well be military propaganda, it could be trickery, or there could be beings visiting us from some other world or some other place that we're not aware of. Yeah, and so if that's the case, if they are actually coming, if that's the truth, then I could see why they'd want to cover that up, because the first question is going to be, well, where'd they come from, right? And they're going to have to come up with some planet or some star system or whatever. But then, okay, well, how did you do it? With what technology? How could you possibly make it this far? And I think that the conversation would just get they want to stop it there, because it would be obvious at some point You know, they got 2 arms, 2 legs, and 2 eyeballs. Obviously, they're not coming from the Crab Nebula, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this whole the whole CERN thing is, you're right. There's a lot of propaganda going on that they're going to open a portal to another dimension. You know, they're gonna find the God particle or the Higgs boson particle or however you say it.
They're going to open the gates of hell, like in Buffy the
Yeah.
Vampire Slayer.
While we're on this subject, I know we're getting to the end of your show, John, but on this subject, so what would you say is more likely? So you go to the next puddle. Let's just pretend for a moment we all believe in infinite plane. So you go to the next puddle. What's more likely, that you find what they describe as being a grey alien, or you find someone that's like the Chinese or the blacks? In other words, just a different type of person. I would say that the latter is far more likely.
Yeah, I would agree, and this is based on some historical accounts. I'm sure that y'all have seen the one of the two. They were like Norsemen, father and son, went up to the land beyond the north. And you've got J.E. Barrington, supposedly went beyond the south 90-degree latitude, and each of these stories winds up finding other worlds. With in the North story, in the land beyond the north, they found a land full of giants with the whole 4 islands separated by inflowing streams, and then Barrington in the south found regular people, but they had just developed culturally out of the whole. When people were coming to the Americas and colonizing the Americas, apparently there was offshoots that got led astray and wound up going south all the way through this pass and found another land beyond the south, and they colonized that and did never try to come back. So I don't know, based on these 2 accounts, if we're to trust these authors, who they seemed very believable, I don't know why they'd come back and lie about something like that. Then yeah, it's pretty likely that you could find other worlds with similar people. I don't see why not.
Yeah, I agree, especially on the flat plane. If that was the case, what would NASA and what would governments do? They would say, "Oh, unfortunately, yeah, there are beings that are coming here, but it's okay. They're coming from really, really, really far away up. Thanks for your attention." That's it. It's just words. They're definitely not going to say they're coming, and they're coming from 10,000 miles beyond the Punta Arenas, in South America. Just there. That's where they're coming from. But we're not going to go there because there's a treaty, because they don't want us there with our diseases or with our bad behavior. They're not going to say anything like that. They're going to say they come from Alpha Centauri, and they have a lovely benevolent nature to them. Let's hope maybe one day we'll make friends with them if you all behave nicely. And that's it.
There's a lot of different storylines you could go along there. They made us. We were engineered by them. There's quite a few different narratives if you want to go with.
On that, and it all ties back to the pagan or Babylonian traditions, which is, it's Egyptian lore, it's Greek lore, it's Roman lore, it's all those many gods, which were basically, Set, Horus, and Osiris, all them. There's just different names. You had like Zeus and whatever the Roman names are, but it was the same sort of cast of characters, just sort of set a little bit differently for their time. And then you have, has anyone out there seen this relatively new movie called The Gods of Egypt?
I saw part of it. It was incredibly CGI'd. It was just so CGI'd. It looked okay at the beginning, and I thought, I haven't got time for this. Really, I watched it for the Flat Earth caption at the start, when you have the main god but in the chariot, which is a huge UFO, dragging the sun around. Yeah, that bit was interesting, but I didn't.
Did NASA produce it?
I don't know.
They're good at the CGI.
Well, not really.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I got.
In that movie, though, it's just another example of this programming that we get, and it was a great movie. I really actually enjoyed it. I'll probably watch it again. That's how much I liked it. I liked it because it's got the actor from what is that series show called? I'll think of what I'm not thinking of it on HBO. Oh, Game of Thrones. It's got the dude from Game of Thrones. So I wanted to see it because I like his work, and it was a good movie. But if you step back and look at this sort of cinema that we've all been programmed by our whole lives, and actually don't allow yourself to be brought in by it, don't allow yourself to veg out on it, but actually go through and critically try to process everything that's going on in this timeline, it really seems like they are pulling at different strings psychologically, and so it is sort of scary. I mean, it's like, do I want to watch this movie? It's like, it's not going to hurt you, but who knows? Maybe it will.
Well, you're flying in the face of the purpose of the movie. So the whole purpose of the movie is to suspend disbelief. And what you're saying is, well, no, I will look at it critically. Well, the whole point of going in is to sit and veg and suspend disbelief, which is what everybody does.
Yeah.
You know the whole black goo thing? Does anybody know about that?
Black goo.
I would say it's the same as the Mandela effect.
Yeah, well, no. This is on a lighter point. This is a movie that you'll find kind of funny in regards to the black goo thing. I saw a movie called John Dies in the End.
Yeah, I couldn't get to the end of it. I've tried to watch that 2 times and I couldn't get to the end.
I had to laugh at some of the things that were in it. I'm a B-rate guy. I find the under CGI and creative kind of thought movies a little more interesting than the ones that have all the explosions.
Yeah, that movie was very gory. I thought it was, yeah, John dies at the end? Yeah, I'm pretty sure, weren't they like hacking people up or something? I don't remember.
No, nobody died. John didn't die either, so I
well, I probably need to go rewatch that then. No,
it's hilarious. It's actually a comedy, and it introduces the black goo at a weird level. I don't know much about this black goo that they're talking about, but I thought it was like a funny segue. So if any of you guys check that out, I think you'll laugh your butt off. It's pretty funny, actually.
Hey guys, if you don't mind me jumping in, I'm looking at chat and there's somebody saying, has Antonio publicly repented for promoting flat earth math? No, and I won't. Well, that guy demonstrated it. He's bona fide and true. So if you have a problem with flat earth math, then that's okay. But when he's demonstrating that AutoCAD doesn't render reality, dude, if you're not willing to accept that, then you need to wake up to reality. And I see that in chat, there's a couple of people that need to wake up to reality.
Well, the issue that I always have about the AE map is not that it's not accurate. It's that you have to understand what is the matrix of the map. What is the map showing us? And when you understand that, it's not that big of a deal for me. And again, what the problem with that map is that it's closer to correct at the center, and less correct as you get away from the center, especially when you get out past the equator or that central ring. It gets less and less accurate in terms of size and distance. So all that gets skewed into the point of infinity around the South Pole. So if that's the case, then distances are going to be stretched out. And you're like, well, you can't do that on a map. Well, if you're looking at a Mercator projection or a Peters projection, it's the exact same thing. It's just, the equator's mostly correct, with the 90 degrees north and south being infinitely stretched at those points. So at any rate, either way, you've got a map that is not rendering an accurate picture of what the face of the Earth looks like, and that's a problem, especially when NASA shows us real pictures that look exactly like the Mercator projection or the Peters projection. I found that as a big checkmate for NASA, all in one right there, but it's sort of hard to describe. I may have blown through it a little too quick.
I think that if we can make the Hadron Collider, we should probably be able to make a map that
this is
reality.
You're totally right. I spent so long looking at maps. Why the hell are there no 2 identical maps made by different people? You would think that there would be at least certain areas of maps that are identical, and there aren't any. Every single
10% copyright law infringement.
Yeah, but really, it's like, come on, they should be. You can say, yeah, Antarctica might have differences because it's ice. Yeah, fair enough. North Pole, same, fair enough. But areas that have, coastlines that are not eroding, Say, what the heck? Why is this? Why are all of them different? If anybody wants to verify this, just look at Russia. Okay, Russia has this area around. You have Norway, Murmansk, and this area that goes all the way to the Bering Straits. Look at that area and just compare them and see how incredibly different they all are. And you think that the Soviets would have mapped it correctly, or somebody, but no, nobody's mapped it. No satellites are mapping the Earth and rendering a correct representation of it. There's something definitely questionable there.
I think we'll get to it. I think we will. But the other thing about maps that you'll find when you research them is that their map maker is very much 50% or maybe 75% or 99% artist first, and actual, detail-oriented cartographer. Sometimes sometimes the accurate cartography takes a back seat to the beautiful maps that they render, right? And they often, you'll look at some map makers taking creative liberties as sort of a signature in their maps. So they'll add an island that doesn't exist to see who copies them. And so it makes you wonder, well, if map makers aren't, like Mercator especially, aren't too worried about the details, and as long as we can get it roughed out okay and make it look real pretty, then people will, and as long as it works out for navigation, which is all based on magnetic polar north and south, that's it, then it's really a moot point. But maybe I've gotten off course here. Does that make sense?
Well, it does. And also, where are they getting all the information for the making of the maps? Because the artists that you're talking about that are rendering these maps, they're not researching the actual information. They're getting their basic information from
old maps. Exactly. Yeah. Yep. So
Yeah, we have surveyors. You get them sometimes in the street by the roads. You have surveyors who are just measuring stuff. They're not measuring it because they're going to change the road layout or they're going to bring a big building. They're just measuring stuff. You see them all the time, measuring freaking pavements. Nothing's going to change. They're not going to alter anything, and they don't alter anything when you look, in hindsight. It could be that they're just like, dude, we've got this much money to spend, let's just put some surveyors out. I don't know. But you think that with the surveyors and the tools they have, what they would do is render the coastlines. That would be really easy to do in terms of actually doing it correctly. So why the hell do we not have any rendered coastlines? Say again?
If they wanted to actually give us the true information, you would think they would do that. But see, that would take a concerted effort because it's a large-scale scenario. So you're talking one company couldn't just, you'd have to have a nation or a government behind you to actually chart the globe, rightfully speaking, in a way that if you were going to honestly do it and render it correctly, it would be a massive, that would be a rather large endeavor, but not impossible. But it would take a serious fortune to do so also.
Well, the other issue too is not so much, okay, well, which old maps are we going to start with, but which matrix do we start with? And again, it's the matrix of the map that's going to define where your points of reference are, or where the points of reference happen to be in your matrix. So if you take an AE matrix and you measure all this out, it's going to render differently than if you do the same measurements on a sphere. And so we may not have the matrix of the map right. Really, and I think that that may be something that we should look at. But is it necessary?
That's a stumbling stone, though, too.
Yeah, it's not necessary, I don't think. I think it's beyond the scope of what I would want to do.
Well, I would like to know the reality of certain things, the size and relation. It would be nice. Let's just put it this way. Obviously, they have a standard size for it at this point. But whether that be right or not, and whether it be applied, like you said, to the right matrix, which it's not because it's to the sphere Earth, so it's already screwed up.
Well, and what I'm saying is there's even different matrices that you could, or matrices that you could use for flat Earth, and I just don't think that we have all of the I just don't think we have all of the data right to get it right. I just don't. Mercator certainly didn't, so I think he just did his best guessing and make it look pretty. So maybe that's the true art of making maps. You know, they have to work and they have to look pretty, right?
Well, the thing is, like the map is not the terrain, like JLB said yesterday, which is true. You know, the map is not the terrain, and they have to work. Yeah, the truth is, the way they work, you know, if you're sailing, the way it works is when you arrive at land, you arrive. Okay, the map might say you've got another 10 miles. Doesn't matter, you've arrived. The same with flight. So when you have the map, it has to look like it works. You know, as long as it looks like it works, then it's okay.
At least give you your general bearing, right?
That's it. Just generally, this is the direction and at a point you arrive. You know, same with pilots. You know, they don't fly blind. They've got, you know, beacon towers. They've got various different things, and you know, I'm sure there've been pilots out there who've been thinking, right, in the next 20 minutes I'll be arriving at San Diego. It's like, oh, gee, there's San Diego now. Oh, that's interesting. And that's it, you know. They're not going to go and write a big report and go to Congress and say, you've got that San Diego in the wrong part of the map. That's, you know, as long as the maps look like they represent the real world, they'll do. The freaking globe with the extra small Eurasia continent, that, you know, when you look at it, you think, this is freaking farcical. Like, really genuinely farcical.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
they can't screw up the road maps because they're actually measurable. So they have to be more accurate, obviously. But yeah, topographical or global maps, they just have to be general in observation because it's not necessary for you to have the exact degree at that point unless you're actually calculating like a pilot would his trajectory.
Yeah. In fact, I'm sure all of us at some point have drawn somebody a map, a route, you know, from one place to another place. You go into a party, one of the drivers doesn't know, and you draw them a really crude map. I mean, I'm talking before like Google Maps and, you know, mobile phones and all of that. And you draw a really crude thing. You say you go straight until this point, then you bear right, and then it's the crudest thing, but it works, and it's nothing like the actual distances that are going to be traveled. You know?
Well, right, and I mean, how easy did Mercator have it? All he had to do was get the American continent somewhere west of the, you know, of France.
Yes.
So, and then the other thing too is east to west on like an AE sort of projection would necessarily be curved. And I remember early on into this thing, I was on some chat groups or something, chatting with some people, and there was a group of people that had all taken their cars out with compasses and aligned themselves to distant city skyscrapes, say 50 miles off in the distance so they could see it and align to it and align with, say, due east, and just see if that course, if they kept their car straight in alignment with those buildings 50 miles off in the distance, would due east remain, you know, their heading. And from what I gathered from real people that tried this is no, they had to keep course correcting to the right, just as they would on an AE sort of matrix. And so if east to west is actually a curved path, strictly right angles to north and south, which is always, you know, straight lines emanating from the center, you know, in the AE flat Earth model, or emanating from the top of the globe in the globe Earth model. The thing is, in the globe Earth model, they would have to be straight lines going from pole to pole and straight lines going from east to west, not curved at all. And I urge people to go out there and do experimentation. I personally don't have a good area where I can drive unimpeded for long distances with such a cityscape, but I know plenty of Australian people out there that could do something like that pretty easily.
Yeah.
Whereas they've got you know, vast areas that they can just drive around on, right? Maybe I could go to the desert and do it.
And the thing is, so, you know, you're going to cover a stretch of 200 miles on a road. You're not going to set your distance thing and travel and then get to your destination and go, hey, it was 115. They've got that wrong. No, nobody's going to do that, you know. Whatever mileage, you're going to arrive when you arrive. And when we look at maps, when we flat earthers get told that we don't have a correct map, we shouldn't be defensive. We should immediately turn and say, hey, you're the ones with all the freaking satellites. Demonstrate to me a single correct map of the Earth. Show me a globe that has everything where it is.
Show
And
me
then
a
just
picture of the Earth, please.
Well, and they'll say, well, if the map works, then it's correct.
yeah, well then we can show them the Gleasons and say, well, there you go.
Well,
Same thing.
my rebuttal to that then is the maps worked for Christopher Columbus before his maiden voyage
Yes.
in the known world, but
How
his,
did it work for him?
maps,
He was looking for the Indies.
right?
Yes.
Well,
It
he was
didn't work
looking,
too good for him.
yeah, it didn't work too good for him. But see, they had all their maps correct, or so they thought. No, they didn't have it correct at all. They had to add a whole new set of continents and a whole nother chunk of the world. So that sort of proved to me that the maps don't necessarily need to be 100% correct to work in reality. And I don't know, maybe that's stretching it a bit, but it's really, if you think about it, it's not. Their maps worked, but they were totally incorrect about a whole side of the Earth. So how could it be? Why it would be silly for us to say that the maps work, therefore they're an accurate representation of the face of the Earth. I don't see that. I think it's a moot point.
Yeah.
Totally.
I tell you what I think is curious. Total, changing the topic. NASA and the ISS using these handheld microphones. This is NASA.
Yeah, really, and play around with them, and
microphones.
spin them around, and play with.
Yeah.
It's CGI. Have you seen them go? You can see the microphones go right through their fingers.
Yes. Yeah, you can. There's a clip with Tim Peake squeezing some water out of a little water thing, and he's placed the mic on the wall, and you can hear the water coming out. You can hear the little sounds of the water being kind of slowly spurted out of this bag. The mic's on the freaking wall 1.5 meters away. If the mic is that sensitive, why the hell are they picking it up in the first place? Just leave it there and talk. It's just the most absurd thing. And I think this is done just to make people think, oh yeah, it's real. They have hassle. They have things. At some point, I bet the mic went missing, and they had to look for it. And it's all human. It's all human things. Look at all the cables hanging off the walls and all of that kind of stuff.
They don't even have vapor locks between chambers.
Yes.
Insane, man.
Yeah, and they have this thermal cover, for the outside. This thermal cover made of a mysterious, I don't know, some material that's going to stop the little entrance area from getting hot. This thermal cover is going to stop that area from getting hot. So they must have some kind of weird instrumentation in that area that could be kind of scrambled by heat. If you look at Brian Mullen's work on heat dissipation, now what the hell is this? What the hell
that
is
is so important, because and it's not just heat either. It's also, you have a static charge.
Belt.
Yes.
That static charge is going to build up and build up until that thing has to ground out eventually, or it's going to fry. And
Yes.
so NASA has never answered that. They've never answered how do they get, for example, a simple O-ring, like a pressure seal. How do they get something like that to work in the vacuum?
Yeah, and what happened to that inflatable extension that they took up there? What happened? Did they
went off
inflate it?
into alien land?
How in the world do they go from such extremes, though? Because you're talking heat, radiation belt, and then freezing cold. We don't have the materials, and the materials that they're showing us in the plane and the videos they give us that is in their stratosphere that makes it look like they're floating around, which is BS. Man, thank God that Armstrong and all them guys that went to the moon, they didn't know about the belt and it didn't affect them. If they would have known about it, though, I mean, good thing they evaded that.
Well, and it's funny too, because Van Allen had indeed, allegedly, apparently discovered the belts prior to the whole NASA Apollo missions. That they were being studied, and NASA was told by people such as Van Allen that they need to prepare for bad radiation up there, and they did not. They didn't put it in the suits or in the fuselage or whatever, the capsule, and so that's a really good proof that the Apollo missions were lies. So if they lied about the moon landings, why? I mean, ask yourself that. Why would they lie? You know?
Do you know?
That's dual fold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, if I can because I have an answer for why would they lie, like a genuine bona fide answer that
Because
makes
the Earth is
sense.
flat and stationary, obviously, but I mean that's what I'm
Well, yeah,
asking. Think.
but separate to that, you had these two competing ideologies at the time with communism and the Western system. This is all part of the play for the masses, for the plebs. You've got the bad Russians and you've got the good Americans, and the Russians have made it into space with their cosmonauts, and the Americans are looking at this thinking this is stop-start animation. This isn't real, but it's been shown to the world somehow because they didn't have control of everybody's television. The world has seen freaking cosmonauts. First they sent this dog out, Laika, and now they sent these cosmonauts and got them back. If they're hoaxing it, we're going to hoax it better. And that's
been
it.
working with the Russians. We are already in a new world order. We work with everybody who's willing to cheat and to steal and to rob at the highest level. That whole thing was like a psyop. Because you have the race between the Russians, the race between the Americans. Then you also have the dynamic of, well, we can fleece the American public by billing them through NASA for billions and billions of dollars for decades and decades.
Yeah, and not only that, if you think of the fear porn that was conducted back then, you had drills in schools where everybody would have to get under the desk. This is how you're conditioning children. The bad guys might kill you any minute, so we're going to practice what you'll do just before you die.
Right. It's not going to save you at all. It's not going to help you at all, but do this every day so that you can be scared out of your mind forever until you die.
What's really interesting about those tactics is that if you get under that table, the desk, you die. You have to be in a triangular safety zone. You have to be where the ceiling falls to a triangle, and they know this shit. It's like preparing us for mass depopulation. It's like another facet of.
I guess we should ask really quick, like, where are the panel members on nukes? Because I've concluded that nukes are a hoax. Are you guys pretty much there as well, or?
I don't know. This is what I say. I genuinely don't know. I think that 9/11 was brought down by nukes under the buildings. This is what I think. But maybe it's not nukes. Maybe it's a natural effect of just shitloads of TNT.
No natural effect. I would have to agree. It was definitely an explosive factor of some sort because steel doesn't melt like that they already did the fuel test.
Yeah.
The structural engineering has already been debunked a zillion times to left field. It doesn't matter. I mean, that's a water under the bridge, unfortunately.
Yeah. Hey, John, we have in the chat Jebby Jedi.
Okay.
I don't know if you've chatted with him
it
before.
It rings a bell. Yeah, it rings a bell.
Should I send him an invite? He's a cool guy. What he does is he's sitting in forums, basically just manning the Flat Earth responses to all the attacks that Flat Earthers get.
Go ahead and send him a link. We got some time left, and I know for some of you guys it's super early over there, so I appreciate you sticking in. We're slated to go off in 10 minutes, but we can stick around for another 20 or 25 if you want to get him on here. Sure, yeah.
I'm actually gonna die. My phone and everything's cutting out on me. I'm having a great time. I look forward to you guys are getting together Saturday.
Yep, that'd be Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern. So I'll send you another invite, Shay. It was great to have you, man. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you either later this week or next week. And so, what do you think, Nathan? Nukes, hoax?
All right, guys. Have a great one. It was really nice talking and meeting you guys.
Thank you. You too, man.
Take care.
You too.
And Kristen, I'd like to hear what you think, Kristen, on the whole nukes. I think it's bull.
Nathan, are you gonna go?
Yeah, there's fake footage of nuke. That's for certain. I mean, I've seen enough I think it was Leonard the Jesuit Order that did this. That certainly the stuff that I saw, and yeah, there's the representation of nukes has been bogus in the past. Does that mean that nukes don't exist, or that there is a device that can create a very powerful explosion? Well, I'd say that I think there is devices that can create very big explosions. Whether or not what they sell us that to be, i.e. nuclear, I don't know.
Yeah, and so I don't know, and Kristen, you can chime in too, but from what I've seen and in my research, and I pretty much didn't have to go through this long, there was some fabrication going on, even in terms of like the whole nuclear bomb. The idea of it was very much theoretical and unachievable, like theoretically unachievable, according to the guys that were set out to build this bomb. And so what did they do? They just spent a ton of money to create these facilities where people would sit around and, quote, cut the holes in the donuts, which is basically like sitting around with their thumb up their butt all day doing nothing, but getting paid, U.S. tax dollar funded paychecks to sit around doing nothing and act and look very scientific about it. But at the end of the day, the nuclear bombs that you might have seen on TV, the old test that they did, that could have just been TNT, and there are some accounts that actually was just TNT, and then you see a lot of what they claim to be nuclear bomb tests appear to be done on a model, so there's some subterfuge going on here. And when you realize that the only two places that have ever supposedly been nuked are thriving metropolises, not even, 50 years later, with no residual, nuclear radiation or fallout or anything like that, like they told us there would be for 1,000 years or 100 years. A couple decades later, it's fine, everybody's happy. And by the way, those two cities looked pretty much just like all the other cities that were firebombed for weeks and weeks and weeks by the Allies. So,
Yes. Yeah. My grandfather was in the Spanish Civil War, and he used to mention this thing. It was a conventional war, so bombs being dropped and bullets being fired, rather than all the kind of technical stuff that happens now. He used to talk about this expansive wave. Okay, now we're talking conventional explosives. We're not talking nuclear explosives. Small bombs. I held one in my hand because one landed 2 feet away from him in the mud, and it was either a dud or the fuse. Anyway, he defused it. But what he was saying was that the majority of the people were killed by the expansive wave, not the shrapnel. He said, and so I'm a kid and I'm saying, what is this expansive wave? And he would just explain it. It's just a wave like wind that pulls you apart inside. Okay, so this expansive wave, this is part of this is the most destructive part of a so-called nuclear device. Is this expansive wave? And I'm thinking, well, if that happens with conventional explosives, then you don't need a nuclear device. All you need is conventional explosives, and you'll have this expansive wave that does all this, destruction.
Right, and the whole thing relies on the theory of the whole atom being correct, and I don't think, I've never seen conclusive evidence to prove that we've got the model of the atom correct.
And who was involved in creating the atomic bomb?
Well, I know Einstein's, E = mc² equation is often attributed to that, sort of as a seed of thought for that project. Then, of course, yeah, you had Einstein. Then you had that one guy who likened himself to the Hindu god of death.
Von Braun?
No, it wasn't Von Braun. It was I forget his name. It's sort of a longer name, but he was the one that was credited for. Yeah, and really, he was an actor. I watched a documentary on this, another one, recently, and I was like, wow, I didn't know that either. But the guy had, he was like the head of the whole nuclear bomb program. He's accredited with coming up with the technology, essentially, more or less. And yeah, he seems to be like one of these typical, people.
Charlotte.
Well, yeah, he's been co-opted. You know, he's an actor.
Yeah.
He's got these preconceived, or you know, he's been profiled to fit this position, and they know that he'll lie. He doesn't have any problems lying as long as he gets the attention, he gets the money, the goodies and everything. So I can't think of his name. Hey, what was the guy's name that did the atomic? He was the atomic bomb guy, and he likened himself to the Hindu god of death. What was his name? Do you remember?
Shiva.
Starts with a P. Starts with a P.
Jack
Anyway,
Parsons.
no, it's not him either. Anyway,
We have Jibby Jedi as
Obi-Wan. What's up, Jimmy Jedi?
Somebody say fake nukes.
Yeah, man.
Man, I did a video talking about it, and we went over some footage of theirs. And one of the first things I noticed were all the streamers right next to these old atomic bomb detonations. You ever see those?
Streamers.
It looks like streamers. It looks like little smoke trails off to the left or the right of all of the old atomic footage.
Yeah.
I was like, what is that? And then I started thinking, the theory being stacked dynamite that's detonated, maybe that is the long fuse that goes all the way back to where they are, and at different points where they splice the fuse together, kind of flares up and creates smoke. So by the time the dynamite explodes, you'll see off to the side other little smoke trails. That's my theory.
Well, a lot of people don't know that when they first came out with atomic bombs, it was like what, 1 kiloton? That's what they were dealing with. So it would have been 1 kiloton is the equivalent to 1,000 tons of dynamite. And so all the military would have to do is put together the equivalent of 1,000 tons of dynamite in one spot, and you'd have basically the same effect as a 1 kiloton bomb. If I've got that right.
Yeah. It was Robert Oppenheimer. Now I'm become deaf.
Yeah, there you go. Robert Oppenheimer. Thank you, man. Thank you. I couldn't think of his name. Oh, I was looking for a P. Yeah.
It's there. It's the open. When you look at it, what's most predominant are the P's, the double P's there.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, see, it's just your damn subconscious.
It's all But yeah, with the, we think of warfare. Lies and deceit are part of warfare. In fact, they're the most integral part of warfare. Lies and deceit. You're gonna say, look, you've got a magical weapon. We're not gonna give you any freaking details, but we'll show you with a great big explosion. You look at the size of the bomb that was dropped by the Enola Gay. It's a freaking huge thing. It's like a bus. That's a heck of a lot of explosives. You don't need something that big if it's going to be a nuclear detonation. No.
They had issues getting the scale right. Because if they tried, there's a sort of a range that they would need to either, when they're constructing these bombs, they either needed to be careful of making it too large. That way, they couldn't carry it, or making it too small so that it wouldn't do enough damage, theoretically. And there was just no possible way for them to achieve what they claimed to have done and get it into, a plane like the Enola Gay and take it over there and drop it. It's just, the planes aren't big enough to carry that much weight. So it seems to me like, we've all been heavily propagandized about nukes being dropped on Japan, and perhaps even the Japanese people believe that. But I don't see the evidence for it. I mean, where's the fallout?
Look at the fear porn that was continued afterwards. When the Soviet Union broke up, we had all these dirty bombs. Anybody, a suitcase bomb, a mini nuclear device. All of these things that were just fear porn. I remember, the bombs that were in the Ukraine's falling apart, and now they're starting to sell them in the black market. Nobody can check that. Nobody can verify that. Whoever it is that has discovered this, let's say it was a bona fide story, there's no chance that it's just some spy who's got no backup. It'd be a case of a spy finding that this nuclear device has been sold, finding an airstrike. That's what it would be. Not, oh, yeah, they're selling freaking suitcase nuclear bombs.
Have you seen The Sum of All Fears?
No, I don't know.
Yeah, I know I've seen it, but who was in it? I can't. Ben Affleck. Yeah, I don't know. I know now. Yeah.
Well, they basically wheel in I think it's like a Pepsi Cola vending machine into a stadium, and it's got a nuclear device in it, and they essentially detonate it and destroy the entire stadium and all, whatever, 40, 50,000 people that are inside.
I can't help but laugh. Where's all the radiation? You know, there are animals thriving near Chernobyl and Fukushima, and there's no radiation there. I mean, does it only affect humans and not other mammal life?
Hey, Jason, do you remember the fear porn from Alex Jones regarding Fukushima and how long before the radiation arrived? Everybody had better get these...
hot particles in New England. I heard all about it. We would get hot particles in our water and snow. Oh, we were so scared.
Yeah, we're not supposed to be able to eat fish from the Pacific Ocean for the rest of the time, right?
Yeah, and we would be seeing it, you know, by now we'd be having all these deaths. Yeah, it's just absurd. I don't understand whether Alex Jones really follows things. Basically, he's just running from the
mainstream. Yeah, he feeds off the mainstream media and regurgitates it back out to us. Like we could listen to it ourselves and twist it ourselves. You know, we don't need him.
And there's the connection. That's something, a point I've wanted to make that's come up, I think, a few times in this episode, this show rather, is how in the mainstream it's all fear porn, but then in the alternative media community it's still all fear porn. It's just a different spin on it. And so people who claim to be awake and truth-seeking, not to knock any of us, but are we really free from living in fear, even though we say we're awake? Or are we being tricked to think, oh yeah, we're aware that all this stuff is happening, but if we're still in fear anyway, then they're still winning.
That's it. Right. This is one of the things that I didn't live in fear beforehand, you know. I'm not saying, you know, big pat on the back for me, but I'm not a big religious person, you know. But I understand that this isn't the be all and end all. I get it, you know. It's not. You don't have to be a genius to figure it out. We're just here experiencing this stage right now. So death, yeah, you know, something you want to avoid for as long as you can, so that you can learn more. In case the whole reason for it is for you to pass certain tests or trials or whatever. But since the flat Earth, it's like, oh, okay. Before I had suspicions, now is no longer suspicions. So there's really no reason for fear. No reason for fear of pretty much anything. I mean, even there's a prisoner in the UK called. He goes by the name of Charles Manson. Sorry, Charles Bronson. And in the US, you've got Charles Manson. And both of these guys say, you know, you can keep me in prison all you want, but you're not trapping me. You know, and these guys don't have fear. This is why they don't get released into the public, because they might just, you know, who knows what they would do. They don't have fear. So living around, you know, walking around, doing your daily routine without fear, you see a different experience of the world. And I think that's part of it. You're not supposed to live in fear. In fact, for the religious out there, Jesus said, you know, don't worry about tomorrow. Let tomorrow worry about itself. You know, have no care for the morrow. Yeah, so don't worry, you know, because fear is just like, you know, a more accentuated form of worry. Worry, you don't need to worry. Nobody needs to worry, you know. In fact, whenever worry comes into the equation, it's because there's a problem. And worry doesn't help your faculties in problem solving.
Well,
So,
you know, furthermore, what I would add to that too, and that's very well put, and I wanted to touch back on something that was brought up as well, but you know, fear, really, if you think about it, is the opposite of faith. Faith is the belief, even if it might not seem very logical or possible, but faith is the belief that something good is going to come, whereas fear is the belief that something bad is going to come. And so, yeah, I mean, I agree with Kristen that, yeah, as long as we're afraid of something, it doesn't matter what that something is. It's, you know, that's the mission. Now, jumping back real quick, now, I believe atomic energy is possible. I don't debate that. So atomic energy is, you know, that's the most expensive, least efficient way to boil water, essentially. It's just encasing, you know, enriched uranium in some sort of metallic encasement that causes heat, you know, from the radioactive isotopes reacting with the metal or whatever, causes heat, you boil water, and you can run a turbine. So
but if you think, sorry, John, if you think about it, they are just electric rods. That's all they are. You know, you have them in this vat with electricity, take the electricity away, they're not going to release it. They're not going to heat up any water. They're just something that conveys heat very quickly.
Hot rocks. Yeah.
You know, that's all they are. They're just elements, you know, like your freaking kettle or anything that will heat up water. That's all they are. So yeah, over time they lose this ability to heat up water very quickly, so they replace them, you know. But that's all they are. They're not magical.
My point was, though, is like, okay, let's just say, and I wouldn't call that atomic energy either. I would call that a stupid way to boil water.
Yes.
But if they can convince people that it's the same technology going in by naming it the same thing, which is two totally different things. An atomic bomb is not the same process as, you know, what's going on in an atomic reactor. An atomic bomb is a horse of a totally different color that involves splitting theoretical atoms that I don't even believe exist, right, anymore. And so that's my position on it until I see good evidence of the theoretical atom.
Yes, aren't atoms 99.9% invisible?
Space.
Yeah.
Empty space.
99% space, apparently.
Yeah. So they're splitting that little bit left, and it does all that damage. I don't know, you know. Which I don't see any real video of. Every video of nuclear detonations are manipulated. If they are not cartoons added on top, they manipulate the saturation and the contrast levels to give it that hot look to them when it could be just a cold smoke plume. Like, go back and watch them. You can see that they are all manipulated. I don't even think I've ever seen a real detonation. They're all cartoons.
And like anything, you know, it doesn't have to be real as long as they can just get us to believe it.
Right. It's real from the eyes in your head. It sees it real.
And since you went back to the nuclear conversation, I just was going to comment earlier. I do think whether they're real or not isn't even the point, because they've gotten most people to believe in them, and we can't vouch for them either way, but they've been fear-porning us with them, whether they're real or not, all along. And that was, getting back to Antonio's point, that was the premise of, you know, why it was so important that we got to the moon with an actual manned mission, because it was about showing military might over the Russians, and they had the whole panic in it, or pardon me, the whole public in a panic over it. And not just, I mean, when your children have to get under the desks at school, that affects the parents even more than hearing it on the news, that this is a constant threat. And of course, they had the hero President Kennedy promising that we were going to get there in time, right? And so, you know, even in retrospect, a lot of people, when they hear that maybe we didn't go in '69, well, that's okay, because they got there in the future missions is one cover story that circulates.
That's really important, because regardless of, let's move off the moon and go to 9/11 and say that event happened, and let's say everybody disbelieved it. Well, that's irrelevant, because further down the line you can just change what the event meant, how it happened. You can do the whole 1984 thing, and this brings us full circle to Mandela. If you can change the books, if you can change the maps, if you can change the literature online, as we can in current day, then you've got control of everything we understand and know. So ultimately speaking, you can blame that on some nonsense like Mandela effect, when reality says that what we are subject to, the TV, the internet, the information we think we're controlling because we type something into a search engine, that is all controlled.
You know, I was training myself to not react to words that are just prompted in front of me. You know, my browser is Yahoo, and I've trained myself to not look at the freaking news things that they have, okay? No matter how much I try, I can't avoid. Now I know, for instance, that there's just been this European football competition that somebody was tracking who the best, sexiest fans were. You know, there, boom, right in front of me. The thing is, even if you want to avoid, even if you are determined to avoid things, what happens is those around you are affected. Then if you think that your job is to try to make those around you not worry, then they're affecting you by proxy, because those people are you know, really afraid of dying by, you know, the Zika virus or Ebola or whatever. And you're thinking, dude, it's a freaking joke. But it takes your time. I'm starting to think, maybe a position that I might start taking is a bit of like a hermit living in a society. I'll just watch and just not react and just laugh from time to time, especially when a globe is shown. Because the hooks that they send out there to engage your consciousness, you know, they just send them everywhere. And like Nathan said, back to the Mandela effect. None of us thought, hey, I'm going to look to see whether there's something weird going on with time and distortions of the past. What happened was, boom, it was there. Gripped our consciousness, you know. And these are all basically what the whole NASA Soviet era thing was. It was that, very prevalent. There's a space war going on. They're trying to get to the moon. And what they've done is they've just slipped into your unconscious the idea that there's distance between us and the moon. They've confirmed it. Because look at this vehicle flying there. It's all very, very cunning, in the same way that they cunningly made me know that there were people registering who were the sexiest fans watching this football. You know, you don't get the choice. It's like, what the hell is this? So what Nathan's saying about switching off television and not engaging with the media, I think it's spot on. But, I mean, it's going to be very difficult to do, because at some point you're going to be somewhere where there's a television, and then you're like, damn it, I've just learned about some paedophile somewhere in the world, you know? And I don't know. I think just being a conscious human being, realizing that these things are done there to distract, to capture your conscience. That's what it's there for, is to capture your consciousness, to engage it, to distract it.
We're just people that know the magician's tricks too. It's not like we're geniuses, but a lot of people, they'll say like, "Wow, you're so smart." I say, "No, I'm not smart." If we go to a magic show and the magician's going to do 10 tricks, and I tell you how each trick is done, that's not intelligence. That's not genius. That's just being aware, and it's just having an awareness of what they're doing and trying to bring that to the consciousness of others. So they're looking for it, because most people are not looking for the fakeries in the television, the CGI. They're just very passively accepting it in their alpha wave state in front of the TV, you know.
And it requires curiosity too. And the thing they're also doing with all of this is stealing our energy. Let's face it.
Yes.
So,
yes. Yeah. Doom porn, paranoia, competition, distractions. It's just gobbling us up while they're propping themselves above while we build the infrastructure for them.
Well, the idea that we're being farmed, and our energy is being harvested, and that in the way that they're feeding on that, you know, as much as they might eventually feed on us in other ways. I don't know.
But you know how there's the Freeman movement. You know, these people say, look, you know, everything breaks down into corporations, and they've declared that all human beings, all persons are corporations, and all of that. It's just a big distraction. Somebody made a comment saying that it pays to keep an eye on your enemy. It's like, well, what if you don't have any enemies? You know, you see people dancing around with guns and stuff. Don't worry about it. If they're shooting at you, then, you know, take evasive action. But when you look at the mechanisms that are engaged with to basically grip us, you know, we're being called a resource. People buy and sell us. Banks trade on our births. All of these things, it's like, who gives a shit? These people are saying, I own this thing. And I'm going to tell you that I own this thing. And you're going to be annoyed that I said that I own this thing. What's actually happened is the person is delusional, thinking that he owns this thing. And if you believe this, they've become your enemy. And now you think, well, I don't want you to own that thing. Dude, it's a distraction. Don't worry about it. What the reality is, you're a human being on this realm doing things. That's it. You're here doing things. There's all kinds of distractions, like Bill Hicks said. It's like an amusement ride. There's all kinds of distractions. There are people who dedicate themselves to really, really cool, nice things. There are a series of videos that I watch from time to time when I want cheering up, called People Are Awesome. I don't know if any of you have seen any of these.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah.
They are freaking awesome, especially the Russian ones. The Russian ones are all about people getting out of their vehicles and helping old ladies cross the street and all kinds of stuff that they fill you with warmth, you know. Now, this means there's somebody out there who sits looking for this kind of footage and compiling videos, 15 half an hour long videos. That is a pursuit worth doing. But sitting there looking at what conspiracies are going to kill you, dude, you know, out of the two, I'd rather look at footage of people helping old ladies cross the street. You know,
Yeah,
because it's your
absolutely.
choice. It's your choice. You can see the world as every single being is your enemy. You know, it's a dog eat dog world out there.
And
Wall Street.
the sad thing is, and you're so right, and it's sad because I talk to, or I'm in touch with people all over the world, now more so than I've ever been, and people from all over the world, all different creeds, colors, faiths. They're just normal people that want to get on about their day, you know, get their paycheck and go home, just like everyone else does. And yet they're able to manipulate us against one another using these, you know, governments and tactics that we've been sort of describing for a couple hours. And I think that's a real shame because especially when you get to the level of indoctrination involved with the military, especially the U.S. military, you know, it basically just rips the soul out of, you know, young boys, mostly, now girls too, can be in the front lines fighting in the U.S. Army. But who are we fighting? We're fighting regular people who have been you know, tricked into thinking that we're their enemy when we're not. We're not enemies with any of these people. It's our governments that are manipulating us, and I think that's a shame. I mean, what do y'all think?
Yes, I totally agree. You couldn't have said it better.
Yeah, they're all working together. They're like somebody said, we are in a new world order right now. They're all working. If they're keeping the same secrets from their people and they're using the same tactics, like rule by fear, and yeah, I'd say that that's pretty much a group effort right there.
Yeah, and in fact, I'd say that that's part of the reason that there's so much dislike of the flat Earth, that people eventually arrive at the conclusion that there's no need to worry. You know, very similar to the pothead attitude to life. You know, don't worry. So they don't. The powers that be don't want a populace that isn't worried. They do not want that. You know, they want the opposite. They want people to be worried. That's why they give us the news. That's why they keep giving us updates on stuff that there's nothing you can do about, so that you'll worry in case it happens to you. And it's like, dude, the onslaught is continuous. And I've used to use the word onslaught, which is a war term, but if you don't see it as an onslaught, if you see it as just, you know, people who are caught in situations where they think they have to push an agenda for whatever reasons, you know, it might be to pay for their yacht, it could be to whatever, it doesn't matter. The only thing that you have control of is your life and how you direct it and how you direct your attention, because there are all kinds of things out there vying for your attention. So you'll buy the next phone or whatever, but they're vying for your attention. There are religions poaching people from other religions, you know, converting people. It's like a game of calling for your attention. And I suspect that there's something quiet, peaceful, calm, not calling for your attention, waiting for you to notice it. And then when you notice it, then you get a sense of peace.
Yep,
Peace.
that's it.
That's it. That's totally right. And peace, you know, again, and I said faith is the opposite of fear, but peace is also really the opposite, or maybe the opposite end result of fear. And, you know, fear, if you've ever really been frightened by something, not maybe in a movie, but in actual real life or in a dream, dreams can be terribly frightening. Fear is not a fun place to be in. But peace sure is, and having faith is a beautiful place to be. And you know, I agree with you guys that you know, there is this sort of coordinated effort to get us all on a massive scale, just in as much, you know, quagmired and as much fear as possible, so as we're not we're not looking in the right places, or sometimes looking directly beneath our feet, right under our noses, for something that's just been waiting for us to discover, you know, our entire lives. And this one here is so simple. You'd think, like Nathan said earlier, I got it in a day or a week or a month or whatever. Everyone else will get this no problem, but it's not that easy. It really isn't.
No, fear is the mind enslaved. That's
Yep.
it. And that's where they want us. And it
Absolutely.
is a state of mind. That's what we've been saying in so many ways. It really comes down to this state of mind. More importantly, it comes down to our awareness that we have a choice about it. Until people are aware they have a choice, it's as though they don't. It's this thing where the awareness is the essential component. And if only we could, to strike another note of what we've already been talking about, but if only people could take full ownership of ourselves. I want to say, if only we could all take full ownership of ourselves. Because, yes, all these other things that, as you say, Antonio, vie for our attention, all the distractions we've all been talking about, these things do take away our, when I say stealing our energy, I mean, it's our life force we're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's whatever you give your energy to, whatever you put your focus on is where your energy goes, right? We've heard things like that before.
Yeah,
Yeah,
energy
and
flows where attention goes.
True.
Yep.
Yeah, and it genuinely feeds on it. I'll give you this might sound a bit obscure. So I'm a painter. When I'm painting a specific area, okay, I'm focused on this area. That area is all that there is, okay? From my point of view, that area is all that there is. But if that area had its own consciousness, my attention is helping it to grow. And in the real world, you have the same thing with the news. We know that there are fake news given to us. They're dressed.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So our attention actually helps that news to grow. So imagine the latest, Florida shooting?
Orlando.
Yeah, Orlando. Yes. Just imagine if we'd all gone, interesting, and just shrugged it off. Okay, that news would have got smaller, and the rest of the world, if everybody went, oh, interesting, and just shrugged it off, that news dies because it lives by our attention.
I think that's half of what they're doing with this, though, is basically desensitizing us so that when somebody actually does get hurt right in front of us, we just go, and walk past them and, step on their head.
Well,
Right.
that's what we're going to be doing because we're so used to all the fake news. It's going to be hard to go which one is real. I mean, maybe ones that aren't blamed on ISIS, I might listen to a little closer because I'm like, well, I don't hear the usual keywords. Maybe this is a real one, but as soon as I hear them, then I know.
Yeah. But the thing is the point is, when it's news, if you're involved, if you're walking down the street and there's a shooting, you know about it. It's not news. It's actually an event that you're involved with. But when it's news about stuff, first of all, it's news about an event that finished. So you're just being told a story. Imagine that there was some terrorist attack and the government did nothing, because let's face it, part of a terrorist attack is to engage with the consciousness and cause fear. So the government basically displaying what this terrorist attack was is a terroristic action. What the government should do, this is a terrorist attack in some place, is not report it. That's what they should do. That totally negates the actions of the terrorist.
Right, but the terrorist is the government. That's the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
And they should know that giving attention to the terrorists would just make them stronger. Like, that's exactly like what I used to think. Like, why are they giving them attention? You should ignore them. It's like we don't give in to terrorist demands. Well, you are mainstream media. You're giving into it. Like, and you're making everyone else feel like it's real.
Well, and it's funny because the police here in America use that model. They do. They will not release certain elements of a crime scene, or they won't release, like, for example, whether you believe in Lucifer or God or not, it's irrelevant. There are people out there that worship Satan and Lucifer and go and sacrifice animals and people, and they do this. But to think that these elements don't exist is sort of an issue, because they do exist. But the news will go on underreporting it so that people don't start asking questions, and the police don't go out reporting that we've got a rash of Luciferian style sacrifices in our county. They don't. They cover it up so that people don't get freaked out and start. And then you get the whole copycat thing, right? And so they'd rather keep it under wraps. And so I agree. I don't see why they wouldn't do that on a world stage. But then once you realize that the world is the stage and they're sort of the actors on the stage, the governments are, right?
Yeah.
Then it makes sense.
This, we've seen that photograph of the astronauts portraying hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. So, so now we have these connotations. These guys were astronauts; they're liars, and we have a negative spin on that proverb. It's an ancient Chinese proverb. The reason for the proverb isn't ignore bad stuff. It's saying don't see evil behind bad stuff, because when you see evil behind bad stuff, you have an emotional response which stops you seeing clearly. So you can't find the solution because you're emotionally engaged. Instead, see it as the problem. See it as the situation it really is. You can see a bunch of snakes in a school, and they could have just found their way in. Okay, you can see that as an evil event. Now, if you see it as an evil event whilst it's happening, you're not seeing clearly. So don't see the evil, see the event, see clearly, and that way you'll find the solution that you would otherwise not have found because you were distracted by your emotions. Because let's face it, we live in a world of emotions, and they know this. The media know this. All organizations know this. The education systems know this. This is why teachers will use ridicule, which is an emotion. You don't want to feel ridiculed. It's an emotion. So as long as we start learning how to discern, what the situations are. I'm not talking about becoming an automaton that has no feelings, but direct your feelings yourself,
Discern. So, okay, CERN, your mama's so fat. No, I'm kidding. We guys, I'm so sorry. We gotta wrap this thing up. We're about out of time, but I just want to quickly give each and every one of the panel members a chance to say some final thoughts. If you have anything that you'd like to plug or mention, just take a minute or two each. We'll start with Nathan. You've been quiet for a little while.
The only thing to plug for me was probably Robert Shortman's show, because Robert Shortman's doing his first hangout tomorrow. He's a little bit cloak and dagger about it. He's got a couple of mystery guests. But yeah, go and watch Robert Shortman's show. It's on Doom Weaver, DOOM Weaver 2007. So yeah, that's at 8
Doom
p.m.
Weaver
GMT.
2007.
That's it.
And at 8 p.m. tomorrow?
Yeah, or today for us now.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Awesome. Well, that's really great. Thanks for that, Nathan. And it was, as always, a pleasure to have you on. You've been great, and hopefully we'll see you on some future shows. You've always been real good, and even though the pay sucks. Kristen Wolf, I'm just moving to my left as I see the people in the screen. So, Kristen Wolf, it was good having you. Thanks so much. And I'll just say this for all the guests, even the ones that aren't here anymore. Thank you all for your time. Thanks for coming. And Kristen.
Oh gosh, it's been great being on this show with all of you. Thanks, and great to meet all of you for the first time. I only knew John before this show, and an event skeptic who was here for a while I've talked to a bit, and anyway, but it's been really, really great to talk about all these different things, and there was a million other things as usual that I would have loved to comment, but there's no time for it all. It's just inspiring.
Oh, I forgot. I have to type stuff out on a notepad, or I just forget everything I wanted to say, and there's just so much good discussion. It's sometimes you have to sacrifice certain things, but that's why I really like having.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I did take some notes myself tonight. That's good advice you gave me before, and so I've learned to do that, and I got thrown off by the computer crashing on me. Sorry about that. When Nathan was responding to my comment, and so I'll get to hear that 10 minutes or so later that I missed. But I want to plug this show, John, because I'm just really glad it's back on, and it's been fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm very honored to be able to be a part of it. Thank you.
Well, go ahead and for everyone out there that's not familiar with your stuff, if you could, if you don't mind, what's your YouTube channel again? I would just butcher it. I'm sorry.
Oh gosh, it's
I'm subscribed. I wouldn't spell it right or something.
Well, I keep changing the name too, so no, I have a couple times. It's not helping. It's
No,
the
it
plain.
won't help.
No, it's the Plain Earth Inquiry. But luckily, I changed it before anyone knew about it anyway. So I'm kind of kidding there because it really hasn't mattered given the timing of it. But whatever, the Plain Earth Inquiry, and I just have a few videos up so far that are things that I was probably never going to get around to editing to try to make them more cohesive, and so I just threw them up anyway and said, "What the heck?" And
I enjoyed them, and I'm looking forward to some more. So you better start making more, or you're going to make people mad. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I have a lot of different formats in mind I'd like to try out, and so we'll see if I ever get around to it. It's just life has had other plans for me, and I've been entrenched in a life project, and I'm outdoors all the time, and it's been amazing. And so it's really hard to come back to the whole computer world once you finally find a way to break away.
Oh God, I know.
So it's been great, and also I know you've been moving and stuff, and that's a big deal. So I hope everything is so far going well for you, and just all the best with that.
Yeah, it's going great, and I appreciate you asking. Jibby, so this is I know I've seen you around before. You get around on the YouTube comments. I know I've seen you, so it's good to finally talk to you. What you been up to, man?
Well, it's good to talk to you too, and I've been a fan of yours for a long time. I remember your first videos, and I was plugging them away on the forums, pushing all of your stuff. I've been a fan of, and that's what I want to promote is all of your channels, because you guys really, you guys hit it out there, and you do a great job. On my channel, I have some K-Talk AM show videos. We got Flat Earth and NASA fakery and fake news. We got it out on the radio, and we had a lot of people on there like Mark Sargent and David Weiss, and we had a good run there. So we got it out on the radio, and that's a good medium for people who are just starting out in this, because they trust the television and they trust the radio.
Right,
so,
but never trust the internet, especially if they're telling you the Earth is flat.
Yes, yeah, and even though the same thing is on the TV and that's real, the same thing on YouTube is fake, right? And yeah, we know this.
Yeah.
But
and finally,
and like you were on Coast to Coast, like that's where we can get this stuff out there. But they stepped all over you. And
well, they fired Art Bell too after that, so he won't be doing any more of those. Finally, we got and thanks so much for your time, Jimmy. It was good to meet you. And I can, if you want to join future episodes, we'll do these Saturdays at 3 Eastern and Wednesdays at 8 Eastern U.S. time. Antonio Subaratz, my man, if you want to wrap up the show, and then I'll wrap up you, and then I'll wrap up the show.
All right, cool. So it's been great. Thanks for the invite, John. Do you know, Jibby, Jason, you mentioned that you've been a fan of John. Okay, when I first woke up to this, John, the Morgile channel was one of my go-to sources. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things I think is absolutely stunning about this whole phenomenon that we're experiencing is that you come across characters that you admire, and very quickly and very effortlessly, you're acquainted with them. And it's like, dude, what is this? How is this working? Because it's
the
awesome.
opposite. It's the opposite of what we're used to. It's like the more work that I do and the more subscribers I get, the more people hate me, and the less money I make. So there you go.
Oh, hey, John, regarding money, Nathan, have you told John about the whole thing we were talking about earlier with monetizing videos, the whole details? Okay, and that's it. I'll drop out. I'll say thanks everybody. I'll be sitting here silently just in case anything's going on. But thanks, John, for having me, and thanks everybody else. Lovely to meet you, Kristen. And yeah, it's been cool.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah. Well, did you have something that you wanted Nathan to add? Or
No, I can say you told me.
Yeah, say again, Nathan.
Half of it John told me.
Oh, right. Okay. So, okay, that's okay.
Oh, okay.
It was to do with monetizing.
Yeah, I didn't, when I started my channel, I wasn't monetizing anything, but it sort of became the prudent thing to do because I'd lost a lot of my regular work, and it's really just taken over my life. I mean, there's nothing else, like, I mean, I mentioned this in the beginning, it's become sort of the most important thing that, I've just felt this moral imperative to get out there. But anyways, we have gone almost, well, just over 3.5 hours, so it won't even take up to 4. So I'm going to wrap this up and thank you guys again for your time. This show is viewer, listener sponsored, so if you want to support the channel, you can do so via fan funding on TheMorgile, or on, you can do it through PayPal to johnelance@gmail.com. So anyways, thanks y'all so much, and spread the word, spread the world, and peace out. Hello, everyone out there on the stationary plane. Just starting up, so give me 1 second so I can share this long-ass link.
So is this on the Morgile channel, like the proper
Yes,
Morgile?
yes, it is, finally.
Is this the first one on the proper Morgile channel then?
Yep. Oh,
Wow! Oh, that's good news.
yes, it is. Thank you. It sure is. And so what I just did is I thought I shared the link to that on Facebook, but I didn't. So let me, here we go. Sorry, y'all out there that happen to be listening live. We're running into some Season 1 technical difficulties, but no worries. So we've got the great Nathan Oakley. How you been doing, my man?
I don't know about great, but yeah, I'm doing fine.
All right, and we've got Kristen Wolf. How you been doing, Kristen?
Oh, doing great, John. How are you?
All right. Doing great. So I'm still trying to get this stupid link to join, so I'm sure that everybody's still sort of piling in, and I want to thank everyone for joining us for Season 2, Episode 1 of Static Plain Truth Live, where we just sort of go over our research and where it's taking us in, from either a heliocentric perspective and how that matches or doesn't match our reality, and of course a geostationary flat Earth perspective, which seems to be what we've got. I don't know about you guys, but I've come to the conclusion now it's been over a year, and I've really been looking hard for evidence to support what we've always believed and what we've always been taught as true, and I'm just coming up empty-handed in terms of proofs for the spherical Earth, but everything, and whether we've got every last inkling of the model down to a T or not, I don't think it's necessarily up to us as flat earthers to continue falsifying all of the heliocentric premises. And so, like, just to keep it simple, if we don't have axial rotation and we don't have curvature, then it's irrelevant to continue arguing like the southern stars phenomenon, if that is even a phenomenon. Does that make sense to y'all?
I agree.
Yeah.
So, it's sort of hard to figure out new ways to argue this topic, and to me it's sort of irrelevant because, again, the burden of proof really does lie on the heliocentric model to come out with some solid evidence of curvature and axial rotation. And I watched a recent, and thanks to Event Skeptic, I watched a recent Hawking test. He did a laser curvature test over 5 miles, and allegedly the laser beam raised, I think, 6 feet above where it should have been if it was a level. But technically, it doesn't make any sense because at 5 miles away, that laser should be going through about 15 feet of water. It shouldn't be 15 feet above a boat that's 5 miles away. So I don't know, or 6 feet, or whatever the case was. But did you guys see that yet? It was like one of those Stephen Hawking documentaries, and they do like the Jeranism laser test over 5 miles.
No, I haven't seen it.
It's pretty funny because they use actors and everything to set the stage as if they've done this laser test, but in fact it was repeated by a guy named Dr. Zach. So definitely check that out. Dr. Zach did a laser test over 5 miles, and it was totally level. So, lasers behave oddly depending on.
Hey Robert, how you doing? Have you met Robert Shortman before?
Hey, hi, Morgalen. Hi.
Yeah. Hey, what's up,
And
Robert? We've met
Kirsten.
before, man.
Yes, we have. Yeah, we spoke before. And Kirsten, pleased to meet you. Have not spoke to you before, I don't think.
True, Robert. Nice to meet you, and nice to meet you too, Nathan. I keep meaning to say that since I didn't say it right off, straight off, and didn't
Sorry,
imagine.
you're both really rude.
Well, I probably should have introduced you, but I'm the worst host ever. So, and I seriously I cannot find the live feed. I haven't done this in so long, so I was gonna share up links, but I've literally spent the last 20 minutes trying to figure out where is this damn link and how am I gonna share it on Facebook. So sorry.
I've done it
Hopefully,
for you. I've done it. I've shared it. I've shared the link to get
yeah.
it.
I'm a mess. I'm sorry.
I'm on it. I'm on it. I'll sort you. I've got you back.
No, it's fine, really, and I appreciate it. But yeah, I'm just gonna have to forget about this sharing this link because I can't even find the. There we go, the live hangout. So, Robert, what you been up to? Ooh, and we got Event Skeptic. So this is like I said when everyone probably joined on. This is a show that everyone's late to because I say, it doesn't matter if you're late.
They turn up eventually.
Well, it takes people, it takes people a while to start showing up on the audience side as well. So, the first 20 minutes is usually just sort of pre-chat, and now that we've got everyone's attention and we've got plenty of people to talk, so that I don't have to keep talking, I'm gonna go grab something to drink. And if anybody wants to plug anything or just mention anything real quick, I'm gonna go grab a drink, and I'll be right back.
Yeah, I'll go for it. Yeah, I'm doing a live hangout tomorrow at 8 p.m. GMT plus. It should be quite good. There's going to be a couple of guests that are known to be coming, but there's going to be a few extra people that will be turning up as well to make the call even more interesting. So it's going to be good. Lots of interesting stuff to talk about. Structured water and other interesting stuff like that this chap's really quite aware of, and he also makes the most fantastic crystal LED lights that light up your room. So he'll hopefully be showing some video footage of that as well, which I think he's busy filming as we speak.
And it won't be although it's the first on your channel, it's technically not your first hangout, is it?
No, yeah, because I did the one at the weekend, so that was yeah. The second hangout live then. Yeah.
I'm back. Sorry, and it's 7-Up time for me.
Yeah, so my channel's Doomweaver 2007, and it's on at 8 o'clock tomorrow GMT. But it's gonna be good. Gonna be fun.
Doomweaver, isn't it? DOOM Weaver.
Yeah.
'Cause I got it wrong. Doomweaver.
Yeah, it's an old kind of name that I didn't realise I could change it, and then I kind of started with it, and then got subscribers, and then it was kind of
Yeah, that's exactly what my name came from, honestly.
too late then.
Yeah.
You've both got gaming names, haven't you?
Yeah, that's exactly where I got my name. It was just a name I sort of made up, and it was a tag name that I used for going all the way back to Team Fortress Classic.
Wow.
It's a mod of the original Half-Life series. So there you have it. Showing my age a little bit with video games. Now that's creepy.
I know where you're coming from, so.
Showing your age with video games. What is the world coming to?
It's funny when people pronounce it TheMorgile and things like that. Other pronunciations too, right? Oh well.
Yeah.
It's cool though.
Oh, I mean, I thought it was always clearly Morgile.
Yeah.
I mean, that's clearly what it says. But no, I've had people say you'd be zipping around a parabolic curve, going east at that rate at the equator. Theoretically, in the heliocentric model, got to put your caveats in there.
Yes.
But it would be plainly obvious just by simple demonstrations, no theories involved. We don't need gravity if the Earth is a stationary plane. And so all this is, it makes so much sense to me, and it makes so much sense to anyone who actually goes down that path to look at all this stuff. But from the stance of an average person, I mean, I was there 14 months ago. I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. Why would anyone, ever go out and make videos about this topic? I was just astonished. But once you actually do start doing observations and going back and thinking, through your life, has the heliocentric model matched my experiences, or has it been in conflict with my experiences? I've mentioned this a few times, but I remember distinctly when I was pretty young, 10 or 11, I took my first airplane flight, and I told my aunt after arriving in Dallas, Fort Worth from Orlando that I figured out the Earth wasn't spinning. Something to that effect. I can't remember exactly what I said, but she was like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Well, the flight from Orlando to Dallas, Fort Worth is the same in duration to the return flight." And so even as a child, 10, 11 years old, as a kid, I realized I had this observation that I was pretty, confounded. But then, of course, my aunt, same difference, potatoes. She said, no, that's stupid. Everyone knows the Earth is spinning. And so, well, I guess I'm stupid. But, in fact, if you go back and revisit this topic, indeed, there should be, and really this is dependent on the time of the year, too, I reckon, because the Earth is supposedly going around the sun, but that's all, we don't even need to look at that until we look at this supposed spinning that would cause airline flights going north to south all sorts of problems. It should make helicopter rides, a lot more fun than just hovering. If a helicopter was just hovering, technically, if you think about the laws of physics, the centrifugal force, if the Earth was spinning and then the helicopter takes off, it wouldn't just maintain that frame of reference forever. It would need to be fastened to the ground to remain that rotating frame of reference around that parabolic curve, going east 1,000 miles an hour, dropping about 300 feet per hour, I want to say, and of course orbiting around the sun, flying through space around the galaxy flying through space, and it's just like all of these different, sometimes in sync, sometimes in contradiction, motions would just be so plainly obvious. And unfortunately, it's just very, it can be difficult to get people to look at this topic for some reason. Maybe y'all have had better experience, but hey, this is such a new thing. Like, honestly, I have such a different outlook on life in the last 14 years. It's just how much it can change a person to, just stop, think about what we've been taught. Does it match our observations? And then research it, do the experiments. And I don't know, it's just, do you guys feel that way too? Like, I don't know, maybe it's just me.
I mean, the problem is that what we're seeing, I hate to use these sort of loaded words, but awakening, is unprecedented. And when we see people have like meltdowns and, crazy benders off the back of this, and we just sort of isolate them as one individual case, but on the whole, we don't know what is, as a net result of finding out these great big revelations. You find out you're not on a spinning ball, we're not hurtling through space, it's all a load of nonsense. Space has absolutely been misrepresented, and you don't know what that does to people cognitively.
Atmospheric refraction, that's always a issue, right? But I don't know. I don't think that's it. I don't think that would make the laser beam raise out of the water, right? Maybe I should roll the clip. I guess I'll probably get a copyright strike. I don't want to do that.
On your very first show back.
Yeah, that would not be good. So, yeah, just check out, whenever y'all get a chance out there, check out it's the Stephen Hawking laser test. It was basically put out there to debunk flat Earth, but then Dr. Zach did sort of a response to it and debunked them. So, and they weren't using actors, they were using, actual measurements and people. They weren't like recreating the situation. So, anyways, thoughts on that?
Well, Rob Skiba was on Patricia Steer's show a couple of days ago, and he was talking about something very similar, where a surveyor had contacted him, not a flat earther, but had basically explained a very similar situation. He'd done very, very accurate measurements, and he'd measured something like, I can't remember the exact number, but I'm going to guess at about 8 centimeters of swell across, I think it was, 8 miles or something, a vast amount of water. But it was very calm, and all they were measuring was the water being pushed by the wind, and that was all they could measure. In other words, it came back completely flat, which is, we should say that with lots of revelation in our voice. Like, look, it is flat. It's no joke, but it's no revelation to us because it's so obvious. It's obviously and observably flat. No shock.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And just a question out there, is anyone other than me having issues finding the actual live show, or did you just send me a link to that, Nathan? Sorry, y'all.
No, it was when I just had a look to see if it appeared in the like my subscription feed, and it was there at the top of the list, and I've stuck it in Flatland, which is like a Skype group with 100 odd people in, and I've stuck it on Facebook. I've stuck it on.
Oh, you stuck it in Flatland. Okay, so if it's in there, then I just got to find the bottom. But yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous because the more and more we look at this, it's just the more preposterous the whole idea of a spinning sphere becomes, and it's like it's just such a waste of time to keep on going over curvature and axial rotation, curvature and axial rotation. But at the same time, if they're putting out looks like pretty, I wouldn't say multi-million dollars, but I would suppose that Stephen Hawking doesn't bill cheaply, right? So yeah, maybe a multi-million-dollar production to show curvature of a lake over 5 miles. Like, what would have possibly given them the the reason to do that, right?
Right.
To deceive us, no other reason.
Well, I mean, why would Stephen Hawking want to go measure for curvature and come up with false data, just totally perjured data, unless they were in some kind of an area where, at the right conditions, they know there's going to be this much of inverse refraction or whatever. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, that's amazing. When did you say that was made, or did you say when?
I guess it was pretty recently, but yeah, just I can send you a link, but it's like Stephen Hawking 5-mile curvature test, or 5-mile laser curvature test, something like that.
Okay, yeah, I missed out on it, but I definitely want to see it. But it sounds, if it was recent, it must be in response to all the talk about the flat Earth circulating around the plane. So,
Well, to me, it would just be so obvious, not just because when you say spinning east at 1,000 miles an hour near the equator, roughly, it's not just that linear frame of reference. It's a curved frame of reference, and so
it could be extremely damaging to some people. So while you say it'd be nice to wake everybody up, you then have to question, well, are we part of a machine that is waking people up gradually rather than in a great big wave so that we have people descending into chaos? You just don't know. It might be that when people describe Flat Earth as being a psyop, I'm not trying to perpetuate that as an idea, other than to say that it may be inevitable. The Earth is observably flat, and that is an inevitability that we'll find out because it's so obvious. We chuckle, but everybody's been programmed. So to unbrainwash them quickly might be a dangerous thing. Not to be a party pooper.
No, and this is, I totally agree. This is not something that you can just approach everyone with and they'll be open to it. And like I said, I was right there 14 months ago or so. Well, actually, it was maybe a little longer than that when I was first, this topic was first ever mentioned to me in any sort of real sense, because, I always had the preconceived notion that it was just a stupid thing for stupid people from 500 years ago plus. That was my take on it, and I was fine with that. But once you actually go in and look at this, it couldn't possibly be what we've all been told. And so, but you're right though. People they don't want to do the research, they don't want to do the observation, they don't want to participate in the science, and yet they say that we as flat earthers are anti-science, and that's really, I mean, that's preposterous as well. Science is defined by what? Experimentation and ultimately getting towards the truth or closer towards the truth. Maybe never any absolute truth, but we can certainly falsify curvature over many miles. We can falsify spinning with just about every physical experiment. I was thinking about this the other day. We've all seen the big vacuum chamber that NASA has,
Mm-hmm.
and they drop like a feather and a brick, right? And in the vacuum, the feather and the brick fall at the same rate. Well, that's all fine, but what isn't it? I always thought this is what Globers will tell you, that it's the atmosphere. It's the atmosphere, and it's that momentum that everything has that keeps it going east. And I say, well, fine to east, but what about dropping 330 feet per hour, down at your feet? And so anyway, to me, if it is, that's the Glober's claim. It's the atmosphere that keeps playing in lock sync with the gravitic, orbital spinning of the globe. But what about in a vacuum chamber? There's no gravity in a vacuum chamber, is there, Nathan? I mean, not gravity, atmosphere. There's no atmosphere in a vacuum chamber, right?
Yeah, it depends where it is. If it's on Earth, then yeah, plenty.
Well, not enough to keep, say, a feather locked to the rotational velocity of the spinning Earth, right?
No.
I don't think so. It would be in a vacuum chamber. You'd think that feather and that brick should slide a little bit west. I mean, that's what you'd think in a vacuum chamber, because again, the whole thing against the proof that I had arrived at when I was 10 or 11, that like an eastbound flight from New York to LA or back, it's the same duration either way.
Even with the Coriolis contradiction, they would say that it's dragging along the atmosphere or the lack thereof. So therefore, the vacuum, there's still. I'm sure you could talk your way around that in the heliocentric explanation for Coriolis. I'm sure there'd be some sort of Weasley words in there somewhere.
Of course.
Probably.